Captain Grant Harlan slapped me in the lobby of Liberty Ridge Veterans Medical Center and said, "You're nobody here. Wait by the door." He said it in front of 27 patients, 3 clerks, 2 donors, and a boy holding his grandfather's cane. Then he looked at my old nurse badge and smiled like he'd found trash on polished tile. I touched the small metal pin on my cardigan. Not for comfort. For count. 4 generals would walk through those glass doors before lunch. One of them carried a sealed packet Grant Harlan had never bothered to read. When he opened it, the captain's face would lose all its color before General Bell finished the first line. But before the packet, there was the lobby. That morning, Millbrook had rain on East Mercer Road, and brake lights backed up past the pharmacy entrance. Liberty Ridge Veterans Medical Center always looked clean from outside. Red brick, white trim, 3 flags, a bronze plaque under a blue cloth beside the main doors. Nobody at the front desk knew what the plaque said, not officially. The dedication board had kept it covered for 2 weeks. I had asked once. Clerk said, "Some donor thing, Ruth." I said, "Probably." Then I set my coffee down straight and started work. I was 64 years old. My knees were older on wet mornings. My left hand got stiff before storms. I had retired from the Army as a master sergeant after 38 years in military medicine. Then I buried my husband, Patrick Delaney, in a suit he hated. After that, I took part-time lobby duty at Liberty Ridge because sitting alone in a quiet house will teach you things you don't need to know. Lobby duty sounds small. It wasn't. The lobby was where people arrived before their charts did. It was where pride kept men from asking for wheelchairs. It was where wives whispered symptoms their husbands denied. It was where old soldiers tried to stand too long because sitting felt like surrender. I watched faces. I watched wrists. I watched shoes. Shoes told the truth early. A dragging toe, a swollen ankle, a man leaning too hard on one side, a woman walking 3 steps behind her husband because she was scared he might fall. At 8:16 that morning, the automatic doors opened every few seconds. Rain came in with everybody. Wet coats, damp paper, hand sanitizer, coffee from the volunteer cart. I had 1 floral cardigan, 1 plastic badge, 1 small metal pin shaped almost like old nurse jewelry. Most people never looked twice at it. An older amputee did. He rolled in from the east entrance with his daughter pushing his chair. He wore a faded ball cap that said 3rd Infantry Division. His right pant leg was pinned neat below the knee. He glanced at my cardigan, then at the pin. His hand went still on the armrest. I saw it. He saw that I saw. Neither of us said a word. That was proper. Captain Harlan came through the lobby at 8:24. He wore pressed blues with too much confidence in the shoulders. He was 32, maybe 33, temporary patient flow officer, son of Warren Harlan, who had donated enough money to get his name on a rehab wing and his boy into meetings. Grant Harlan had the face of a man who practiced concern in mirrors. He walked beside 2 donors from Columbus, a woman in pearls, a man with a silver tie clip. Behind them came Deputy Director Voss, red-faced and whispering into his phone. Harlan pointed at the lobby. "We've improved movement by 31%, he said. That was the first lie I heard that morning. The second came fast. "Patients don't wait here anymore," he said. "We route them cleanly." I looked at the chairs. Every seat was full. A retired Marine in row 3 had been there since 7:42. A Gulf War veteran near the vending machines had a wristband from yesterday. A woman in a blue raincoat had asked twice for cardiology. Nobody had called her. I didn't correct Harlan then. There's a time for direct fire. There's also a time to let a fool finish loading his own weapon. At 8:26, the east doors opened again. A thin man stepped inside with his wife. He was maybe 78, gray jacket, wet hair, left hand tucked oddly against his coat. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. His wife said, "He says he's fine." He wasn't. His right cheek had gone slack. His eyes were trying to focus and losing the fight. I moved before the clerk looked up. "Sir, sit here," I said. The wife said, "We're signed in." "Now," I said. My voice stayed low. It usually did. I turned to the clerk. "Page stroke team. Time of onset?" The wife blinked. "About 10 minutes. In the car." 8:16, I said. "Write it." Captain Harlan stopped talking to the donors. He looked annoyed first. Concern came later. It had to travel through management. "Mrs. Delaney," he said, "we have intake protocols." "I know. You don't direct triage." I just did. The clerk had the phone to her ear. Good girl. Nervous hands, but good instincts. Harlan stepped closer. "Move him back to registration," he said. "No." The lobby went quiet, not silent. Quiet. There's a difference. Quiet still breathes. The old man's wife gripped her purse with both hands. Harlan smiled at her. "Ma'am, we'll take care of him. Our process is very efficient." I looked at his watch, then at the patient's face. "Your process can wait," I said. "His brain can't." The donor woman made a small sound. Harlan heard it. Men like Harlan hear status better than alarms. His jaw tightened. "Mrs. Delaney, step away." "No." One word, plain. The stroke team came at 8:28. 2 nurses, 1 resident, 1 transport aide. I gave them onset time, face droop, speech change, left arm weakness, and blood thinners unknown. The resident nodded. "Got it," she said. "They moved him fast. That should have ended it. It didn't." Harlan watched the donors watch the old man roll away. His numbers had just been made human in public. Some men forgive anything except that. He turned to me. "You embarrassed this department." I moved a patient. "You undermined command." I looked at the blue cloth over the bronze plaque, then back at him. "You gave an unsafe order." The slap came fast, not hard enough to drop me, hard enough to make the lobby stop breathing. His palm hit my left cheek. My glasses shifted. The sound cracked against the tile and came back smaller. The boy with the cane gasped. The clerk covered her mouth. The older amputee in the wheelchair lowered his head. I did not raise my hand to my face. I touched the pin. Then I moved past Harlan and caught the Marine in row 3 before his knees folded. He had tried to stand because old habits are stubborn. I got one arm under his elbow and eased him back down. "I've got you," I said. He whispered, "Sorry, ma'am." Nothing to be sorry for. I set him down straight. That was my rule. My little rule. My hands knew it before my head did. A bed corner, a collar, a folded flag, a frightened patient. I set it down straight. Harlan's voice came from behind me. "Security." 2 guards near the west hallway looked at each other. One was named Paul. He had 3 children and a bad back. The other was a younger man named Kenny, who still called every woman over 50 ma'am like his grandmother might hear. Harlan said, "Remove her badge." Paul stared. "Captain?" "You heard me." Deputy Director Voss appeared at Harlan's shoulder. He looked at me, then at the donors, then at the ceiling. Administrators do that when courage costs money. "Ruth," Voss said quietly, "maybe wait near the door." I looked at him. He looked away. There it was. Not the slap. Not really. The loss was smaller and meaner. A man I had helped for 6 years decided the floor was safer than my face. Harlan held out his hand. "Badge." I unhooked it from my cardigan. White plastic, black letters, Ruth Delaney, lobby services. Below that, a faded red sticker from flu season. He took it between 2 fingers. "Door help doesn't need clinical authority," he said. Door help. The word landed. It stayed. I had heard worse from better men. Still, It had weight. The donor with the silver tie clip gave a thin laugh. He regretted it almost at once. The older amputee looked at him, and the laugh died. Harlan handed my badge to Voss. "Keep her by the entrance until command arrives," he said. "No chart access, no triage contact, no interference." Voss nodded once. Not proud, just obedient. That's how broken systems stay alive. Not by monsters, by nods. I stepped to the glass doors. Rain striped the windows. Cars hissed along East Mercer Road. Across the lobby, the blue cloth covered that plaque. Its bottom corner had been taped to the wall because the air vents kept lifting it. At 9 o'clock, there was supposed to be a dedication ceremony. The schedule said it honored continuity of veteran care. That phrase meant nothing. It had the weight of a napkin. Still, Colonel Daniel Reeves had cared about it. Reeves had been my last commander. He had also been Patrick's closest friend. He died 8 months before that morning. Quietly. Off stage. That's how I think of it. One week he was mailing me stubborn notes in block print. Then he wasn't. His condolence card still sat in my kitchen drawer. Not Patrick's condolence card. Mine from Reeves, after Patrick passed. He had written one line under his signature. Reeves kept the last copy. I never asked him what he meant. That was my mistake. At 9:06, Kenny shifted beside me. "Mrs. Delaney," he said. "You okay?" "I'm standing." "That's not what I asked." "No," I said, "but I'm standing." He swallowed and looked at my cheek. I didn't like that. Neither did I. "Can I get you ice?" "Get Mrs. Palmer in row 2 some water. Her hands are shaking." He looked over. "How do you know her name?" "She signs in every Tuesday." He went. Paul stayed near the desk. He kept glancing at Harlan's hand. Maybe he had never seen an officer strike an old nurse before. I had seen rank used badly. Rank is a tool. Some men use tools. Some men wave them around until somebody gets hurt. At 9:12, Harlan gathered the clerks. He kept his voice bright. "During inspection windows, nobody sits longer than 15 minutes in visible intake. If they're non-urgent, move them to secondary holding." Clerk said, "Sir, secondary holding is full. Then use the education room. That isn't staffed. Log them as transferred." The clerk stared at him. I did too. Transferred meant care had moved. It hadn't. It meant the public lobby number improved while the patient disappeared behind a door. That wasn't flow. That was hiding. I reached into my cardigan pocket. I had no badge now, no computer, no authority they recognized, but I had a visitor map folded into quarters. Blue ink, Liberty Ridge Veterans Medical Center, main floor, cafeteria, radiology, chapel, restrooms. I turned it over. At 9:13, I wrote, "Harlan ordered non-urgent patients logged transferred to education room. Inspection window." Then I wrote names: Palmer, row 2, hands shaking, water needed, Benson, row 3, Marine, fall risk, unknown male, stroke signs, arrived 8:26. Sent back? No. Team took him 8:28. I wrote times because memory is good, ink is better. At 9:20, Harlan walked past me with Deputy Director Voss. He didn't slow. "Still here?" he said. "You told me to wait by the door." The donor woman had returned with a paper cup of coffee. She looked at me over the rim. Harlan said, "Good. You can follow one order." I smiled a little. It wasn't kindness. It was math. "Sometimes." His eyes narrowed. "You think this is funny?" "No." "Then wipe that look off your face." I looked back toward the lobby. Mrs. Palmer had stopped shaking. Kenny had brought water. Paul had moved a chair for the Marine. The clerks were working faster now because fear is an ugly fuel, but it burns hot. "I'm looking at the room," I said. "No, you're making a point." I don't need to make one. That bothered him more. He stepped close enough that I smelled mint and starch. My father sits on the advisory board, he said. I know. General officers are coming today. I know. You embarrass me again, and you'll never work in this building. I looked at the covered plaque. You may be right. He expected fear. I gave him grammar. His mouth tightened. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it and walked away fast. I saw the screen for half a second. Columbus command delayed. Bell party due 10:40. General Marcus Bell, retired 4-star, chair of the dedication board, old school presence, careful eyes. He had visited Liberty Ridge twice that spring. Both times he wore a dark suit and stood with his hands behind his back. He never spoke much around me. Once, near the elevators, he stopped and looked at my pin. Then he asked, "Did Reeves tell you to keep wearing that?" I said, "Yes, sir." He nodded. Good. That was all. Some conversations are small because the people in them already know the weight. At 9:31, the older amputee wheeled himself toward the entrance. His daughter tried to stop him, but he shook his head. He parked beside me. "Ma'am," he said. "Sir." His eyes went to the pin again. "Where'd you get that?" "From a commander who didn't like loose ends." His mouth pressed into a line. "I heard about something like that," he said, "years ago. Lots of stories grow legs. This one had rotors." I looked at him then. He looked away first. "Wasn't my place," he said. "No." He nodded. "Reeves kept the last copy," he said. My hand went still. I did not ask how he knew that phrase. Not there. Not with Harlan 20 feet away. The daughter frowned. "Dad?" He said, "Nothing, honey." But it wasn't nothing. It was a door inside a locked room. At 9:40, Voss came to me with my badge in his hand. For 1 second, I thought he had found his spine. He hadn't. He held the badge out, then pulled it back. "Ruth, I need you to understand this is temporary." "Then give it back." "I can't." "Then it isn't temporary." He rubbed his forehead. "Grant is under pressure. So is Mrs. Palmer's heart. That's not fair." "No," I said, "it isn't." He lowered his voice. "There are inspectors in the building. If today goes wrong, funding gets complicated." I looked at the lobby. Patients are not complications. "You know what I mean?" "I do. That's the problem." He stepped closer. "Please don't make me write you up." There it was again, that little civilian prayer, "Please make my bad order easy." I took the visitor map from my pocket. I wrote his name on the back. Voss saw it. "What are you doing?" "Setting it down straight." He stared. Then he walked away with my badge. At 10:02, the lobby started to change, not visibly to everyone, but I saw it. A media crew from Columbus parked near the flagpole. 2 men from facilities checked the blue cloth over the plaque. A woman from public affairs arranged 4 chairs near the podium. 4 chairs, not 3, not 2. 4. Each chair had a small white card taped to the seat. I could not read them from the door, but I knew enough about ceremonies to know chairs were never accidental. Harlan noticed them too. He moved fast toward public affairs. "Why are there 4 general officer seats?" he asked. The woman said, "Dedication board update." "Who approved that?" "General Bell's office." His face held steady. His neck did not. He turned and saw me watching. "Door," he called. I was already at the door. "Door help." The word came back, smaller this time. At 10:13, the clerk named April slipped near me with a stack of clipboards. She was 26 and tired behind the eyes. Without looking at me, she whispered, "They changed the lobby log." "Who?" She swallowed. "Patient flow office." "When?" "After you flagged the stroke." "Show me." I can't. Then don't. She shifted the clipboards. Under them was a printed public lobby status sheet. She let the bottom page slide just enough. I read fast. 8:16, patient logged stable. 8:26, no critical intake. 8:30, lobby cleared to secondary. False. 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 My cheek still burned, but that sheet did more damage. A slap is one man's failure. A falsified log can become a policy. April whispered, I printed the old one before it refreshed. Keep it. I'm scared. Good, I said. Scared people still know what's wrong. She looked at me then. I softened my voice. Put it somewhere Grant can't reach. She nodded and walked away. At 10:25, Harlan came back with 2 officers I did not know. Both young, both clean. One carried a tablet. The other looked at the floor too much. Harlan pointed at me. She's not to move from that area. The tablet officer said, Is she the one from the incident? Incident. Useful word. It makes a slap sound like weather. Harlan said, She refused a direct order and disrupted triage. I said nothing. The floor-looking officer glanced at my pin. His eyes moved past it. Nothing. That was common. Harlan raised his voice a little. For clarity, Mrs. Delaney is not clinical staff today. She's door support pending review. Door support, a promotion from help. Government language does that. It puts polish on insult. The donor man with the silver tie clip came near again. He said, Good to have boundaries. I looked at his tie clip. Always. He blinked. He didn't know if I agreed or cut him. That was fine. He could carry both. At 10:32, the automatic doors opened for a woman with a walker, then a courier, then a young father carrying a toddler with a fever. I kept moving only as much as I could without giving Harlan a fresh excuse. Chair on your left, I told the woman. To pediatrics desk, I told the father. Tell them fever and breathing fast. The courier had a brown leather folder. He handed it to public affairs. She signed twice. Harlan watched the folder cross the lobby like it owed him money. I watched too. It had General Bell's office seal. At 10:38, Paul came to stand near me. He kept his voice low. 4 black SUVs just turned off East Mercer. I looked through the glass. There they were. No sirens, no fuss, just clean movement. Harlan saw them too. He straightened his jacket. Voss smoothed his tie. Public affairs touched her hair. The donors drifted toward the podium. The lobby rearranged itself around importance. That part never changes. The older amputee rolled his chair back 3 inches. He made room beside me, not in front of me. I noticed. At 10:40, the first SUV stopped under the awning. Captain Grant Harlan stepped away from the desk and put on his best face. I folded the visitor map once, then again. Names inside, times inside, bed numbers inside. My cheek had stopped burning. My hands had not. The front doors opened. General Marcus Bell came in first. He did not hurry. He never had to. He was tall in a dark overcoat, with a folded program in one hand and a black cane in the other. Not medical, not weak, just old injury and weather. Behind him came 3 more. General Elise Harrow, retired Army Medical Command, small and straight as a ruler. Lieutenant General Raymond Pike, Air Force, with silver hair and eyes that counted exits. Major General Thomas Quell, National Guard, younger than the others, broad through the shoulders, face closed. 4 chairs, 4 cards. Harlan stepped forward. General Bell, welcome to Liberty Ridge. Bell looked past him, at me. His eyes moved to my cheek first, then to the missing badge clip on my cardigan, then to the pin. He stopped walking. The 3 behind him stopped too. That was the first wrong thing Harlan noticed. In hospitals, important people always move toward the podium. They shake hands, they smile, they let the camera find them. These 4 men and women stood inside the automatic doors and looked at an old woman without a badge. Bell took 1 step closer. Mrs. Delaney. General Bell. His jaw worked once. Who did that? Nobody breathed. Harlan's best face slipped for half a second. I said, "I'm standing, sir." That isn't what I asked. Kenny stared at the floor. Paul stared at Harlan. The clerk April had frozen behind the desk with one hand on the mouse. Bell looked at Harlan then. "Captain." "Sir," Harlan said, "why is Mrs. Delaney at the door?" Harlan recovered fast. Men like him practice recovery more than truth. "There was a minor personnel issue, sir." Bell looked at my empty badge clip. "Minor." "Yes, sir. She disrupted intake flow during an inspection window." General Harrow turned her head toward him. "Only that. It was enough." Harlan kept going. "She was reassigned to door support pending review." Door support. The word came back again. It had less strength with 4 generals hearing it. Bell's eyes stayed on Harlan. "Where is her badge?" Deputy Director Voss stepped forward with the badge still in his hand. He looked relieved to have a task. "Sir, I have it." Bell did not take it. "Why do you have it?" Voss opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. Captain Harlan directed temporary restriction of access. "On what authority?" Harlan answered for him. "Operational authority, sir. I'm managing patient flow today." General Pike looked around the lobby. His eyes moved from the patients to the covered plaque, then to the education room door, then back to the desk. "Where's your secondary holding area?" he asked. Harlan smiled too quickly. "We use flexible space when necessary." "That wasn't my question." Harlan paused. "Education room, sir." "Staffed?" "It's monitored." General Harrow said, "By whom?" Harlan turned to her. "Ma'am?" "By whom?" His throat moved. "Available staff." "That isn't an answer," she said. "I watched him learn something. He had been good at handling donors. He had been good at handling clerks. He had even been good at handling Voss. But this was different. These people did not need him. That is a hard room for a shallow man." Bell held out his hand to Voss. "Badge." Voss gave it to him. Bell looked at it for 1 second. Ruth Delaney. Lobby services. Flu sticker. Scratched plastic. Nothing official enough for a man like Harlan to respect. Then Bell handed it to me. "Put it on." I did. Harlan said, "Sir, with respect, she's under review." Bell looked at him. "By whom?" "By command, sir." "I'm command for this ceremony. This involves hospital operations." General Quell spoke for the first time. "Then operations can wait 3 minutes." Harlan's eyes flicked toward the donors. That was his tell. Always status first. Always the people watching. The donor with the silver tie clip stepped closer. "General, Captain Harlan has done excellent work improving visible wait times." Bell looked at him. "And you are?" "Edward Harlan." There it was, not a surprise, not really, a confirmation. Captain Harlan's father stood 6 feet away, polished and calm, his tie clip bright under lobby lights. Bell nodded once. "Board advisory." "Yes, sir." "Donor." "Proud supporter." General Harrow looked at the waiting area. "Patients aren't window dressing, Mr. Harlan." His smile stiffened. "Of course not." A nurse crossed behind him with a wheelchair. The little boy with the cane had started crying quietly. His mother bent over him, whispering into his hair. Mrs. Palmer watched the generals without blinking. The Marine in row 3 sat with both hands flat on his knees. Bell lowered his voice. "Mrs. Delaney, are you injured?" "No, sir." "Were you struck?" The lobby held still. Harlan said, "Sir, there was contact during a non-compliance event." "Contact." I felt that word in my teeth. General Pike's face changed. "Not much." Enough. Bell looked at me again. He waited. That was the kindness of good command. It makes room and does not fill it. Yes, I said. He slapped me. The clerk April shut her eyes. Kenny whispered, "Ma'am." Bell did not raise his voice. Captain Harlan. Sir, she refused a direct order. Did you strike her? It was a controlled corrective response. General Harrow said, that is not a thing. Harlan looked at her. Ma'am, I was preserving order. No, she said. You hit a nurse. Plain words do clean work. Edward Harlan stepped in again. My son has been under immense pressure. This facility has had issues for years. Pressure does not grant permission, Bell said. Voss nodded like he agreed now. I looked at him. He stopped nodding. Bell turned to public affairs. Where's the packet? The woman with the headset lifted the brown leather folder. Sir, here. Harlan's face tightened. That packet is for the dedication program. It is, Bell said. Sir, we're not scheduled until 11. Bell checked his watch. We're early. The media isn't set. Good. That word landed harder than a speech. The public affairs woman hesitated. Sir, do you want the podium? No. Bell pointed to the admissions counter. There. Harlan stepped in front of him. Sir, before any public remarks, I need to brief you. No. It concerns the honoree. Bell looked at him for a long second. Does it? Yes, sir. There may be a suitability issue. My hand went still against my cardigan. Suitability. He had found a new word to hide behind. Bell said, Explain. Harlan looked toward me, then toward the donors. Mrs. Delaney was involved in a lobby disruption this morning. She interfered with documented flow procedures, countermanded my instructions, and created confusion during a sensitive inspection period. General Quell said, You just said honoree. Harlan blinked. General Pike looked at Bell. Bell did not move. Harlan realized he had stepped too far. I mean, sir, if she is connected to the ceremony, her conduct may affect optics. Optics. That was a thin word for a thick shame. Bell turned to me. Mrs. Delaney, did you countermand him? Yes, sir. Why? Stroke signs, 8:16 onset, arrived at 8:26, left face droop, slurred speech, left arm weakness. I sent him straight to the stroke team. General Harrow came alive. Door to team? 2 minutes. Blood thinners? Unknown at handoff. Last known well? 8:16, wife confirmed twice. Harrow nodded. Correct action. Harlan said she had no authority to make that decision. Harrow turned to him. She had eyes. Nobody spoke. That sentence did not need rank. Bell took the brown folder from public affairs. He did not open it. Not yet. His thumb rested on the seal. I knew that seal. Not the office seal. The other one beneath the flap. Old wax pressed flat, protected under clear tape. Colonel Daniel Reeves had loved old habits. He said paper made cowards nervous because paper could sit quietly for years. Bell saw me looking. He said, You remember this? Yes, sir. You know what's inside? No, sir. That was true. I knew Reeves had kept something. I knew his card had said so. I knew the amputee had repeated the same line, but knowing a door exists is not the same as opening it. Harlan looked from Bell to me. He heard the shape of trouble, but not the language. Sir, he said, I recommend we move this to the conference room. No. General Bell, this lobby is full. That's why we'll stay. Edward Harlan leaned toward Voss. This is inappropriate. The older amputee spoke from beside me. No, it ain't. His daughter whispered, Dad. He did not look at her. Been waitin' years to hear it said right. Bell looked at him. Sergeant Benson. The Marine's mouth tightened. General. So that was his rank. Benson. I had written only Marine, row 3, fall risk. Bell stepped toward him. I didn't know you'd be here. I come Tuesdays. For therapy? For coffee that tastes like old socks. A few people laughed softly. It helped the room breathe. Bell nodded toward me. You know, Mrs. Delaney. Benson looked at my pin. I know the pin. Harlan made a small sound. Sir, with respect, a pin doesn't establish authority. Benson turned his wheelchair slightly. Captain, that pin got men out. Harlan stared at him. Benson looked at me then. Sorry, ma'am. Don't be. His hands tightened on the rims. I was in the second lift. The words went through me carefully. Second lift, not a full memory. A door cracked. I saw night without wanting to. Wet canvas, red dust on sheets, a generator coughing. Reeves holding a radio to his ear. Patrick's voice somewhere behind me, calm because patients were listening. My own hands writing bed numbers with a marker that kept drying out. I folded it down inside myself. A person can live a long time by choosing what to carry in public. Bell saw my face and did not ask. Good command knows when not to touch a wound. General Harrow moved closer to Benson. Unit? 2nd Battalion, 148th Infantry, Attached Convoy Security, Iraq, 2007. Harlan said, This is outside today's operational concern. Benson looked at him. Not for me. Bell still held the folder shut. Captain Harlan, did you alter the lobby log after the stroke call? Harlan's head snapped toward him. No, sir. April made a sound behind the desk. Small, but it was enough. Bell turned. Clerk. April froze. Sir? Name. April Monroe, sir. Do you have something? Her eyes went to Harlan, then to Voss, then to me. I shook my head once. Not no, steady. She reached under the counter and pulled out a folded sheet. Harlan stepped toward her. April. Bell said, Stop. Harlan stopped. April held the page with both hands. I printed the first status sheet at 8:32, before it refreshed. Voss whispered, April. She kept going. Her voice shook. She still kept going. The current log says no critical intake at 8:26. The old one shows Mrs. Delaney flagged stroke signs. It shows Captain Harlan overrode lobby movement at 8:27. Then the later sheet changed it. General Pike took the paper. Harlan said, That's an internal working document. Pike read it once. It's a record. It's preliminary. It has timestamps. The system updates automatically. April said, Not those fields. Everybody looked at her. She swallowed. Those are manual fields. Harlan's face went pale under the lobby lights. There it was. Not downfall. Not yet. But the first crack had a sound. Bell handed the sealed folder to General Harrow and took the sheet from Pike. He read in silence. Then he looked at Harlan. Who has edit access? Harlan said nothing. Voss cleared his throat. Patient flow office, Captain Harlan, me. 2 supervisors. Did you edit it? No, sir. Bell looked at April. Did you? No, sir. General Quell said, Then we preserve both copies. Harlan's father stepped forward. General, this is an administrative misunderstanding. Bell turned slowly. Mr. Harlan, step back. I'm on the advisory board. You are not in command of this room. Edward Harlan looked offended. Men with money often mistake access for command. He stepped back. Not far. Bell turned to me. Mrs. Delaney, do you still have your notes? I took the visitor map from my pocket. Harlan saw it and understood too late. What is that? He said. A map, I said. Bell held out his hand. May I? I gave it to him. He unfolded it once, then again. Names inside, times inside, bed numbers inside, orders inside. My handwriting was small because Army nurses learned to use margins. Space runs out in bad places. Belle read for a long time, long enough for Harlan to sweat, long enough for April to start breathing again, long enough for Mrs. Palmer to whisper to Kenny, "Is she in trouble?" Kenny whispered back, "I don't think so." Belle looked up. "You wrote this after your badge was removed?" "Yes, sir." "Why?" "I had no chart access." That wasn't my question. I looked at Harlan, then at Voss, then at the covered plaque. "Because the room was still happening." Belle nodded once. That was all. A nod can carry more than comfort. Sometimes it carries instruction. General Harrow handed the sealed folder back to Belle. "Marcus." He looked at her. She touched the seal. "Not yet." That surprised Harlan? It surprised me, too. Belle's eyes moved to the media crew outside, then to the inspectors entering from the east hallway with clipboards and badges. He understood timing better than anyone in that room. He closed his hand over the folder. "Not yet," he said. Harlan heard mercy. I heard discipline. Those are not the same. Belle turned to Voss. "Secure a conference room adjacent to this lobby." Voss moved fast. "Yes, sir." Belle said, "Not for a delay, for evidence custody." Voss stopped. "Yes, sir." "Bring the original access logs, not summaries, originals." "Yes, sir." "Bring the patient flow supervisor." Voss looked at Harlan. Belle said, "Now." Voss left. Harlan tried to follow him. General Quell moved half a step. "Captain stays." Harlan stopped. That was the second wrong thing. He was not being escorted, not formally, but he was no longer free. Belle turned to public affairs. "Keep the cloth on the plaque." The woman nodded. "Yes, sir." "No ribbon, no photos until I say." "Yes, sir." Edward Harlan said, "This ceremony has donors present." Belle looked at him. "Then they'll witness good record keeping." The donor woman with the coffee put her cup down, quietly. I liked her for that. At 10:51, the east hallway doors opened and two inspectors came in. One was a woman with gray hair cut short. Her badge said Inspector Alvarez. The other was younger, carrying a laptop in both hands like it was already evidence. Belle met them halfway. "Inspector Alvarez," he said, "you're early." "So are you, General. I need preservation." She looked at the lobby, then at me, then at Harlan. "What kind?" "Logs, badge restriction, patient movement, manual edits, education room transfers." Her face changed at that last one, not shock, recognition. She had heard the phrase before. "Who authorized education room transfers?" she asked. Harlan said, "Temporary flow adjustments are standard." Alvarez looked at him. Name: Captain Grant Harlan. Role: Temporary Patient Flow Officer. Who signed the diversion order? No diversion order exists. April looked down. Belle saw it. Alvarez saw it too. Alvarez turned to April. "Clerk, did you print anything else?" April looked scared again, but fear had already changed shape in her. "Yes, ma'am." "What?" "Yesterday's secondary movement sheet, and Monday's." Harlan said, "April, stop." Alvarez turned toward him. "Captain, don't speak to my witness." Witness. That word changed the room more than General did. Witness meant a person had standing. Witness meant memory mattered. Witness meant somebody else would write it down. April pulled 2 more pages from a drawer. Harlan stared at the drawer like it had betrayed him. It hadn't. Paper does not betray. It waits. Alvarez gave the pages to the younger inspector. "Scan them, chain note, now." He opened the laptop on the admissions counter. The lobby watched him work. No podium, no ceremony, no music, just a counter, a laptop, a sealed folder, and a captain learning that records can outrank a father. Bell came back to me. Mrs. Delaney, sit down. I'm fine. I didn't ask if you were fine. I looked at the chairs near the podium. He followed my eyes. Not there. He pointed to the chair beside Sergeant Benson, so I sat. That was harder than standing. Standing felt useful. Sitting felt like letting the room see me. Benson looked straight ahead. About time. Don't start, I said. His mouth twitched. Yes, ma'am. Harlan watched me sit. He was angry again. Fear had reached him, but pride was fighting back. He stepped toward Bell. Sir, you're allowing a lobby aide to influence an inspection. Bell said, choose your next words carefully. I will. This facility has struggled with inefficient legacy staff who resist modernization. Mrs. Delaney is liked, I'm sure, but she operates outside process. Today proves it. General Harrow looked almost tired. Captain. He kept going. I improved throughput. I cleaned the lobby. I moved non-urgent cases out of visible intake. I protected the hospital during donor review. That is my job. Alvarez looked up from the papers. You moved patients to an unstaffed room? It was staffed as needed. By whom? He did not answer. She repeated it. By whom? Harlan looked at Voss, who had just returned with a nervous man from patient flow. The man's name tag read Carl Dutton. His face had already chosen survival. Dutton said, Captain Harlan directed us to list them as transferred. Harlan turned. Carl. Dutton did not look at him. I told him the room wasn't covered. When? Monday, and again this morning. Alvarez asked, was that in writing? Dutton hesitated. Bell said, Mr. Dutton. Dutton reached into his jacket pocket and took out his phone. Text messages. Harlan closed his eyes for 1 second only, but I saw it. There are moments when a man meets the thing he built. Sometimes he still believes he can talk it down. Sometimes he knows. Harlan knew. Not all of it. Not yet, but enough. Edward Harlan spoke sharply. Carl, think very carefully. Alvarez turned to him. Sir, step away from the witness. I'm simply advising caution. You're interfering. He flushed. I beg your pardon. You heard me. General Pike moved closer to Edward Harlan. You should take a seat. I will stand. Pike's voice stayed mild. That wasn't a suggestion. Edward Harlan sat. The donor woman looked away from him. That mattered. To him, maybe more than anything. At 11 o'clock, the media crew came through the doors with cameras lowered. Public affairs rushed toward them, whispering. Bell raised one hand. Hold there. They held. He turned to Alvarez. Do you have enough to preserve? Enough to start, not enough to conclude. Good. Harlan breathed out, almost relieved. Then Bell looked at him. Captain, you will remain available. Am I being accused? Alvarez said. You're being instructed. He looked at Bell. Sir, I request representation. You should. That answer landed flat. No drama, no threat, just the right door opening. Bell faced the lobby. The dedication will proceed at 11:10. Harlan's head lifted. Sir? Bell looked at him. You heard me. With this unresolved? With it preserved. Sir, the optics. Bell's face hardened. Captain, you keep saying that word. Harlan said nothing. Bell stepped closer. This is a veterans hospital. We do not hide patients to improve a photograph. We do not strike nurses. We do not rewrite the room because donors arrived. Harlan's mouth tightened. Bell lowered his voice. And we do not call service invisible because we failed to read the file. The sealed folder rested under his arm. Harlan looked at it again. Now he feared it. Good. Not enough to satisfy revenge. I did not want revenge. I wanted the room set down straight. At 11:04, Bell walked to the podium but did not stand behind it. He stood beside it. Harrow, Pike, and Quell took their seats in the 4 chairs. The 4th chair stayed empty. That was the false bottom. Everybody saw it. Nobody named it. Public Affairs whispered, "General, should Mrs. Delaney be seated there?" Bell said, "Not yet." Harlan heard it that time. Not yet. He looked at me, sitting beside Benson, badge back on my cardigan, cheek still marked, pin still small under the fluorescent lights. He said too softly for most people, "You planned this." I looked at him. "No." "You knew they were coming for you." "No." "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't expect anything from you." His eyes sharpened. "You're enjoying this." "No." Benson said, "She ain't you." Harlan looked at him. "Stay out of it." Benson's daughter stepped forward. "Don't speak to my father like that." Harlan turned on her. "Ma'am, this is command business." She laughed once, no humor in it. "You're in a lobby." That hit him harder than it should have, because it was true. He was not on a battlefield, not in a command tent, not in a place where rank could hide the smell of fear. He was in Millbrook, Ohio, off East Mercer Road, under bad lobby lighting, in front of people who had watched him raise his hand. A lobby remembers, not with feelings, with witnesses. Bell called across the room, "Captain." Harlan straightened. "Stand near the admissions counter." "Sir, for the ceremony?" For the record. Harlan walked there. The inspectors stood behind him, not touching him. Not yet. Voss stood near the hallway with his hands folded. He looked smaller than he had that morning. April stayed at the desk, pale but steady. Kenny brought another chair for Mrs. Palmer without being told. Paul moved closer to the door, not to keep me in, but to keep the path clear. That mattered too. Small corrections count. Bell opened the program in his hand. Not the sealed packet, the printed program. He read the first line. Liberty Ridge Veterans Medical Center. Continuity of veteran care dedication. His voice carried without effort. Then he stopped. He looked at the printed page for a long moment. Public Affairs went stiff. Bell looked at her. "This program omits the honoree's name." She flushed. "Sir, the board requested a reveal at the plaque." "Who requested that?" She looked at Voss. Voss closed his eyes. Bell said, "Deputy Director." Voss stepped forward. "Sir, Captain Harlan recommended it for donor engagement." Harlan said it was a communications choice. Bell looked at the blue cloth over the plaque, then at the empty 4th chair, then at me. "Communications," he said. The word sounded worse in his mouth. General Harrow leaned toward Quell and said something low. Quell nodded and wrote in a small notebook. Harlan saw that too. Bell set the printed program on the podium. "We'll correct it." Public Affairs whispered, "Sir, we don't have revised copies." Bell touched the sealed folder. "We have the original." The lobby shifted, not loud, just the sound of people leaning into truth. Harlan's father stood halfway. "General, I object to this proceeding without board consultation." Bell did not look at him. "Sit down." "I said I object." Bell turned then. "Your objection is noted." "I want it on record." "It is." Edward Harlan sat again. His son looked at him with something like anger, or pleading, maybe both. At 11:08, the automatic doors opened once more. The young father returned from pediatrics without the toddler. His shirt was damp where the child had rested. He looked confused by the crowd. I called softly, "Breathing?" He looked at me. "Better. They took her back." "Good." Harlan heard me. Even then, he could not stop himself. "She's not on duty," he said. Bell turned from the podium. Slowly. "What did you say?" Harlan swallowed. I said she's not on duty, sir. Belle looked at me, then at the father, then at Harlan. Captain, some people are on duty before they put on a badge. Some remain on duty after fools remove it. The room went silent, not quiet. Silent. Belle still did not open the sealed packet. That would come later. The real record deserved its own breath. For now, he let the sentence stand. Harlan looked at the floor. I did not feel victory. That surprised me. I felt tired. I felt my cheek. I felt the folded years behind the pin on my cardigan. And under all of that, I felt the old rule again. Set it down straight. Belle lifted the sealed folder for everyone to see. This packet was prepared by Colonel Daniel Reeves before his death, he said. It concerns the dedication behind that cloth. It also concerns the woman Captain Harlan ordered to wait by the door. My throat tightened. Benson whispered, "There it is." Belle placed the folder on the podium, still sealed. "Before I open it," he said, "Inspector Alvarez will take custody of the altered lobby records." Harlan looked up fast. "Sir, those are separate issues." Belle's eyes did not move. "No, Captain. They met this morning." Alvarez stepped to the counter and took April's sheets, my visitor map, and the first printed log. The younger inspector photographed each page on the counter. Flash, 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 not ceremony, evidence. Then Alvarez signed a form with a blue pen and passed it to April. "Initial here." April did. Her hand shook once, then steadied. Belle looked at Harlan. "Now we can begin." Belle broke the seal with his thumb. That sound was small. It still reached every corner. Harlan watched the flap open. His father watched Belle's hands. Voss watched the floor. I watched the blue cloth over the plaque, because I did not trust myself to look at the folder. Colonel Reeves had signed that seal. I knew his hand. Broad letters, heavy downstroke. He wrote like a man who expected paper to survive weather. Belle removed the first page and set the empty folder flat on the podium. He did not read at once. That was discipline, too. General Harrow leaned forward. "Marcus." Belle nodded. Then he looked at Inspector Alvarez. "This page stays with me until the ceremony record is entered." Alvarez said, "I'll note that." Harlan's voice came fast. "Sir, if that document concerns the dedication, it has no bearing on patient flow." Belle looked at him. "You keep trying to split a single morning in half. It's not a single issue. It became one when you removed the honoree from triage." Harlan blinked. He did not understand the word. Honoree. Sometimes ignorance shows itself before guilt does. Public Affairs lowered her clipboard. The donor woman pressed her hand against the back of a chair. April looked at me, then away, because she had begun to understand too. I wanted to tell her not to carry it. She had carried enough. Belle read from the top of the page. Dedication Board Memorandum, Liberty Ridge Veterans Medical Center, Continuity of Veteran Care Lobby, prepared by Colonel Daniel Reeves, United States Army, retired. My chest tightened at his name. Not because it was sad, because it was exact. Belle continued. Purpose. To dedicate the primary intake lobby to the Field Medical Continuity Protocol developed during Joint Medical Task Group rotation, January through October, 2007. Harlan turned his head toward Voss. Voss gave him nothing. Belle kept reading. The dedication will recognize the nurse of record whose procedure preserved surgical transfer continuity under contested evacuation conditions and later informed stateside veteran intake triage. The room held still. There it was. Not my name, not yet. The false bottom. Harlan heard enough to fear it, but not enough to fall. His face tightened with effort. Sir, with respect, that sounds like an institutional recognition. Belle looked down at the page. Does it? It references a protocol. It does. Then the hospital is the honoree. General Pike gave a short breath, not a laugh. Less than that. Belle asked, "Who told you that?" Harlan said, "The board materials did." "Which materials?" "The event brief." "Who wrote it?" Harlan's jaw moved once. "Communications compiled it." Belle looked at public affairs. She stepped forward, already pale. "Captain Harlan supplied the language, sir." Harlan turned. "That's not accurate." She held up her clipboard. "I have the draft chain." Alvarez looked at the younger inspector. "Add it." The young inspector's fingers moved over the keyboard. Harlan said, "This is absurd." Belle folded the first page back and held it against the podium. "Captain, did you read Colonel Reeves's full packet?" "I read the approved brief." "That wasn't my question." "No, sir." "Did you ask who the nurse of record was?" Harlan said nothing. Belle waited. The automatic doors opened, then closed behind a couple from East Mercer Road with a prescription bag and worried faces. They stepped in, saw the room, and stopped near Paul. He lifted one hand and guided them quietly toward the west chairs. Nobody shouted. Nobody needed to. Belle asked again, "Did you ask?" Harlan's answer came low. "No, sir." "Why?" "It was not operationally relevant." That phrase bothered me more than the slap. Operationally relevant. I had heard soft versions of it for 38 years, different uniforms, same mistake. A patient in a hallway is relevant. A missing chair is relevant. A nurse with no access is relevant. A changed log is relevant. Belle looked at me then, but he did not use my name. He protected the timing. "Mrs. Delaney," he said, "when did Captain Harlan remove your badge?" I answered from the chair beside Sergeant Benson. 9:12. April said softly, 9:11 in the badge system. Belle turned. "You have that?" April pointed to the counter. It printed on the access denial. Harlan snapped, "April." Alvarez stepped between them. "Captain." "One word. Enough." April opened another drawer and took out a narrow slip. The machine spit it out when Mrs. Delaney tried to reopen the triage panel. The younger inspector took it and photographed it. Flash. Harlan's voice hardened. "She had no authority to access that panel." I said I had access yesterday. You weren't assigned today. I was assigned to the lobby. You were assigned to visitor guidance. Belle looked at Voss. "Deputy Director." Voss swallowed. "She was assigned lobby support. Clinical or non-clinical?" Voss hesitated. That hesitation answered before he did. "Non-clinical on paper," he said. "Clinical in practice." Belle's eyes stayed on him. "Explain." Voss rubbed his thumb along his palm. "Mrs. Delaney handles overflow risk, falls, breathing complaints, confusion. She doesn't chart treatment. She flags acuity." "Who authorized that arrangement?" Voss said, "It predates me." "Who benefits from it?" No one answered. Belle let the silence work. Then General Quell said, "The hospital does." Voss nodded once. "Yes, ma'am." Belle turned back to Harlan. "So you removed the person quietly managing intake risk during an inspection window?" Harlan said, "I removed an unauthorized user." April looked up. Her fear had become anger now. Small anger. Useful anger. "She caught Mrs. Delaney's stroke signs before anyone else did," she said. Harlan frowned. "You mean Mrs. Palmer?" April's face went red. "Yes, Mrs. Palmer. I'm sorry." Mrs. Palmer lifted her hand from the chair. "Don't be sorry, honey." Belle looked at Harlan. "You didn't even know which patient." Harlan's mouth opened. No words came. That was another crack. At 11:14, Inspector Alvarez's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen, then at Bell. "General," she said, "IT has the edit log live." Bell said, "Here." Harlan took a step. "Sir, that should be reviewed privately." Alvarez looked at him. "You reviewed patients publicly." That stopped him. The younger inspector turned the laptop so Bell could see. Voss moved closer. General Harrow rose from her chair and stood beside Bell. Pike and Quell followed. 4 generals around a lobby counter. Not for a photograph, for a log. Alvarez read from the screen. Manual edit, 839. Intake priority field altered from critical review to standard queue. Bell asked, "User?" Alvarez looked at Harlan. "Harlan, admin." Harlan said, "That's my credential, but shared terminals remain active." Alvarez kept reading. Manual edit, 841. Location changed from lobby observation to education room B. Dutton spoke from near the hallway. "That was Benson." Sergeant Benson's daughter stiffened. "What?" Dutton looked ashamed. "Your father and 2 others." Benson stared ahead. "I never got moved." April said, "On the screen you did." Benson's mouth tightened. "That's something." His daughter said, "They hit him on paper?" Alvarez said, "That's what we're determining." Harlan lifted his chin. "Education room B is a valid holding location." I said, "It has no call light." He turned on me. "You are not part of this." Bell did not raise his voice. "Captain." Harlan stopped, but the damage had already left his mouth. "Nobody here. Not part of this." Door help, words pile up. Then one day, they bury the man who used them. Bell asked Alvarez, "Any movement order tied to Mrs. Delaney's badge removal?" Alvarez scrolled. "Yes. 9/11. Access revoked. Reason field says volunteer boundary breach." Public Affairs whispered, "Oh no." I looked at the floor. Volunteer. I had drawn pay from the Army before Harlan was born. I had taught medics in Kuwait in 1991. I had run night medication checks at Landstuhl in 2004. I had stood beside Reeves in Bagram in 2007 while he argued with a transport officer for 6 more stretchers. Volunteer. The word was not an insult by itself. In Harlan's mouth, it was a broom. Bell said, "Who entered that reason?" Alvarez read it. "Harlan, admin." Harlan said, "The system requires a category. And you chose that one." It was closest. I looked up. No. Everyone turned. My voice stayed plain. Retired staff category exists. Temporary clinical support exists. Former service medical exists. He chose volunteer because it made me easier to move. Bell held my eyes for 1 second. Then he looked at Alvarez. "Verify categories." The younger inspector clicked twice. Confirmed. Harlan's father stood again. "This is becoming personal." General Pike turned to him. "It became personal when your son made it personal." Edward Harlan's face darkened. "You're speaking to a board member." Pike said, "I know." That was all. Edward sat. The donor woman leaned toward him and whispered, "Edward, stop." He looked at her like she had changed sides. Maybe she had not. Maybe she had found one. Bell returned to the packet. He removed the second page but kept it turned downward. Harlan noticed. So did I. Bell said, "Colonel Reeves included an instruction on page 2. General Harrow said, 'Read that.'" Bell's mouth tightened. "I will read part of it. Not all, not yet." He turned the page over and read, "The dedication must not be reduced to a hospital branding event. The named individual is not to be replaced by committee language, departmental language, or donor-facing language." Public Affairs closed her eyes. Voss looked sick. Bell continued, "If the honoree declines attention, the chair will still enter the name into public record. Silence is not consent to erasure." My hand went to the metal pin before I could stop it. Harlan saw that. His eyes moved from the pin to the page. For the first time, he did not look angry. He looked cornered. He said, "Who is it?" Belle folded the page. "You didn't ask before." "I'm asking now." "No." Harlan stared. "Sir?" Belle placed the page back on the podium. "You don't get the answer because you're afraid of it." The room stayed quiet. Belle turned to the people gathered behind the chairs. "We are going to proceed with the dedication record, but not the unveiling. The plaque remains covered until Inspector Alvarez has secured the altered patient flow documents." Public Affairs whispered, "Sir, the cameras are ready." Belle said, "Then they'll record the right thing." The media crew lifted their cameras. Harlan stepped out from the counter. "Sir, I object." General Quell moved into his path. She was smaller than him. It did not matter. "Stand where you were told," she said. Harlan's shoulders rose. "I am an officer." Quell's voice stayed calm. "Then behave like one." He looked around the room. No one helped him. Not Voss, not Dutton, not April, not his father, not the donors, not the patients. He returned to the counter. Inspector Alvarez said, "Captain Harlan, place your hospital access card on the counter." His face went still. "Why?" "Temporary restriction." "On whose authority?" "Mine, pending preservation." He looked at Belle. Belle said, "Do it." Harlan removed the card from his belt. The plastic clicked on the laminate. A plain sound. A beautiful one. Alvarez slid it into an evidence sleeve and signed across the seal. Harlan looked at my badge. I knew what he saw. He had taken mine. Now his lay in plastic. Fate does not need poetry. It needs timing. Belle asked Voss, "Who controls lobby operations right now?" Voss looked toward April, then me, then the floor. "Technically, I do." "Not technically." Voss straightened. "I do, sir." "Then restore clinical support access." Voss nodded. "Yes, sir." Harlan said, "You can't put her back on system during an investigation." Alvarez said, "We can restore necessary access under supervision." Harlan turned. "She's a subject, too." Belle said, "She's a witness." Harlan's mouth tightened. "She touched records." "I wrote a map," I said. "You interfered." "I watched." "You encouraged staff to print documents." April snapped. "She told me to breathe." That stopped him more than it should have. April stood behind the counter, small beside the computer towers and stacked forms. "You told me to delete a note yesterday. She told me to breathe." Alvarez looked up sharply. "What note?" April froze. Harlan's face changed. There it was, a new door. Belle said, "April." She swallowed. "A family complaint, yesterday afternoon, Education Room B. A wife asked why her husband's wait time reset after they were moved. Alvarez asked, 'Did you delete it?' 'No, ma'am.' 'Where is it?' April reached under the keyboard and pulled out a folded pink intake slip. 'I couldn't put it in the system. I kept the paper.' Harlan whispered, 'April, don't.' She handed it to Alvarez. The inspector unfolded it. Her face hardened. 'Name?' April said, 'Martin Choi, Navy veteran.' His wife wrote it. Voss covered his mouth with one hand. Belle turned to him. 'You know this patient?' Voss said, 'He filed 2 complaints.' 'What happened to them?' Voss looked at Harlan. Harlan did not look back. Voss said, 'They were marked resolved.' 'By whom?' Alvarez answered from the slip. 'Garland.' Admin entered the closure. Harlan said, 'Complaints are routed through several offices.' Dutton said, 'Not those.' Harlan spun toward him. 'Carl.' Dutton raised both hands, but he did not step back. 'No, not those. You told us family complaints during Donor Week go to your queue.' Belle asked. 'Donor Week?' No one liked that phrase once it was spoken. Public Affairs stared at her clipboard like she hoped the words were not there. Harlan said, "It's informal." Belle's voice went flat. "Say the formal name." Harlan said nothing. Voss said, "Visibility readiness period." General Pike looked at Harrow. "That's a new one." Harrow's eyes did not soften. "No, it isn't." Belle turned the first page of Reeves's packet over with one finger. "Colonel Reeves warned me about language like that." Harlan's father spoke without standing this time. "General, my son is being ambushed." Belle looked at him. "Your son had a lobby full of patients and chose a mirror." Edward Harlan flinched. That landed because donors understood mirrors. They had come for one. At 11:22, the younger inspector's laptop gave a low chime. He turned it toward Alvarez. She read silently, then looked at Harlan. "Captain, there's an export request from your office at 10:46. Harlan's eyes sharpened. "What export?" "Patient flow dashboard, weekly wait time report, destination, external email." Harlan said, "That's routine." Alvarez said, "The address is private." Voss stepped forward. "Whose?" The inspector read it. Edward Harlan's head jerked up. The address was his. The room did not gasp. It did something worse. It understood. The donor woman moved one chair away from Edward. He noticed. Belle asked, "Mr. Harlan, why were hospital wait time exports sent to you?" Edward's voice was tight. "Board oversight." Voss said, "The board receives monthly summaries." Edward glared at him. Voss did not lower his eyes. That was the first useful thing I had seen from him all day. Alvarez asked, "Captain Harlan, did you transmit internal wait time data to a board donor?" Harlan said, "My father advises performance review." Belle said, "Your father funds furniture." Edward stood. "That is insulting." Belle looked at the blue cloth. "So was erasing a name." Harlan said, "No one erased anyone." Belle lifted page 2 again. Committee language, departmental language, donor-facing language. He let each phrase stand. Then he asked Public Affairs, "Where is the draft that named the individual?" She whispered, "In the shared drive." "Print it." Harlan stepped forward again. "Sir, that draft may contain protected information." Belle looked at Alvarez. She said, "A dedication draft is not a medical record." Public Affairs moved to the counter printer. Her fingers shook on the keys. The printer woke slowly. A mechanical cough. A pull of paper. Everyone watched it like it was a witness coming through a door. The first page came out. Then the second. Public Affairs took them in both hands and brought them to Belle. He read the top. His eyes moved once to me, then away. He handed the page to Alvarez without reading it aloud. Harlan almost lunged with his eyes. "What does it say?" Belle said, "It says enough." "That's not an answer." "No, it's a consequence." Alvarez scanned the page. "This draft names the honoree." Harlan's voice lowered. "Who?" Alvarez looked at Belle. Belle shook his head once. She understood. "The name is secured for the ceremony record," she said. Harlan laughed once. It sounded thin. "So now we're hiding information?" I stood. Benson shifted beside me. "Ruth." "I'm all right." Belle saw me stand but did not stop me. I walked to the counter. Not fast. My knees were not young, and the morning had taken more from me than I wanted to admit. Harlan watched every step. He wanted me angry. I was not. Anger takes heat. I had used mine on better things. I stopped beside April. She looked up. "Mrs. Delaney?" "You did fine." Her eyes filled, but she kept them open. I should have said something sooner. "Yes." That startled her. Then I said, "And you said it now." She nodded. I looked at Harlan. "Captain, You asked who it is. Belle said quietly, Mrs. Delaney. I lifted one hand. I'm not going to tell him. Harlan's mouth twisted. Of course you aren't. No, I said. You still have to read. He looked confused. I pointed to the page in Alvarez's hand. Read what you changed. Read what you signed. Read what you sent. Read what you did to the room. His eyes narrowed. You don't command me. No, I said. The record does. Belle stepped closer to the podium. That is enough for now. For now. Harlan hated those words by then. He had heard them 3 times, and each time they meant less shelter. Belle faced the cameras. Public Affairs will record that the plaque unveiling is suspended pending evidence preservation. The dedication record will continue under chair authority. Inspector Alvarez will maintain custody of altered logs and related drafts. A reporter called from behind the rope. General, is the hospital under investigation? Public Affairs tried to speak. Belle lifted a hand. Inspector Alvarez is preserving records. That is all I'll say. The reporter asked, Is Captain Harlan relieved? Harlan's face hardened. Alvarez said, His access is temporarily restricted. Belle added, His duties are suspended pending command review. Harlan turned toward him. Sir. Belle did not look away. You are not managing this lobby. Those words hit harder than any shouting would have. The lobby had been his stage, his proof, his shortcut. Now he stood at the counter with no card. I thought of my own badge in his hand earlier, the plastic pulled from my cardigan. The order to stand by the door. I touched the badge now, still there. Not because someone had given me dignity back. Dignity is not issued. But the room had stopped helping him take it. Voss came around the counter with a temporary access slip. Mrs. Delaney. I looked at it. He held it out. Supervised clinical support, lobby only. The old habit in me reached for it. Then I stopped. My hand stayed at my side. The room noticed. So did Belle. Voss said, Ma'am. I said, Who is the charge nurse on intake? Voss blinked. Lieutenant Said. Then give it to her. He looked toward the hallway. She's in exam 4. Call her. Harlan stared at me. He had expected me to grab the badge like proof. I did not. I was tired of being the patch on a torn system. Belle's eyes changed. Not surprise. Respect. Voss said, Mrs. Delaney, we need someone here. You need staff. April's mouth parted. I kept my voice level. I'll point, I'll watch, I'll testify. I won't be the hidden plan anymore. The words settled over the counter. They were not loud. They did not need to be. Belle said, Deputy Director, call Lieutenant Said. Voss nodded. Yes, sir. He picked up the desk phone. Harlan looked at me with open dislike. So now you abandon the lobby? I turned to him. No. Sounds like it. I stopped covering it for you. His face tightened. Good. That one he understood. The east hallway doors opened, and Lieutenant Said came out fast, pulling off blue gloves. She was young, maybe 30, with tired eyes and a pen clipped to her collar. What happened? She asked. Voss handed her the slip. You have Lobby Clinical Support Authority, effective now. She read it once. Why now? Belle said, Because it should have been yours. She looked at me. I gave one small nod toward Mrs. Palmer, Benson, the young father, the Choi complaint in Alvarez's hand. Said understood the map without seeing it. Clinical people do. She stepped behind the desk. April, open the triage view. April moved fast. Yes, ma'am. Said looked toward the chairs. Mr. Benson, are you still waiting on imaging? Benson said, Seems I am. Not anymore. She pointed to Paul. Wheelchair. Paul moved. She looked at Mrs. Palmer. You're staying where they can see you. Mrs. Palmer smiled faintly. That's new. Saeed did not smile. It's overdue. Then she looked at me. Mrs. Delaney, stay close? I said, I'll stay where I can see. That was enough. The lobby started working again. Not perfectly, not cleanly, but honestly, that was better. Bell watched Saeed for half a minute. Then he turned back to the podium. He placed Colonel Reeves's packet flat and rested both hands beside it. Captain Harlan, he said, stand forward. Harlan did. His father rose too. General Pike said, you stay seated. Edward sat slowly. Bell looked at the captain. You will answer one question for the preliminary record. Harlan said, with representation, sir. You may decline. Harlan's eyes flicked toward Alvarez. She said, you may decline. Bell asked anyway. Before this morning, did you know the honoree was connected to the 2007 protocol? Harlan said nothing. Bell waited. The cameras waited. The lobby waited. Harlan finally said, I knew the protocol had military origin. Did you know Colonel Reeves wrote the nomination? Yes. Did you know Colonel Reeves was deceased? Harlan swallowed. Yes. Did you know he left a sealed packet? Yes. Did you know he wrote that the name must not be removed? Harlan's voice went quiet. I did not read that page. Bell nodded. That is an answer. Harlan looked almost relieved. Then Bell asked, who removed the name from the public draft? Harlan's relief vanished. Public Affairs looked down. Voss closed his eyes. Harlan said, I recommended a simplified message. Bell said, who removed the name? Harlan's jaw worked. I did. The room did not move. There are admissions that make no sound because everyone already knew, but hearing them still matters. Alvarez wrote it down. Bell looked at the covered plaque. Why? Harlan said, for donor engagement. Bell waited. Harlan's lips pressed together. Then he said the truer thing. And because I didn't think one retired nurse should be the face of a hospital modernization event. Retired nurse, not nobody, not door help. A cleaner insult, still an insult. I felt Benson's daughter look at me. I kept my eyes on Harlan. Bell said, there it is. Harlan breathed hard through his nose. Sir, I made a communications judgment. No, Bell said. You made a character judgment. Harlan looked at the floor. Bell gathered the pages, slid them back into the open packet, and closed the cover without resealing it. The plaque remained covered. My name remained unspoken. For that moment, that was right. The record had enough air to breathe, but not enough to end. Bell looked at Inspector Alvarez. Secure the draft chain, the access export, and the complaint slip. Yes, General. Interview staff before anyone leaves. Yes. He looked at Voss. Notify command in Columbus. Voss nodded. Immediately. Use the word suspended. Voss swallowed. Yes, sir. Harlan flinched at that. Not from the word. From Columbus. A local mess can be managed. A Columbus call becomes a file. Bell looked at him one last time. Captain, you will wait in conference room 2 with Inspector Alvarez's staff. Harlan said, Am I under escort? Alvarez answered, You're under instruction. He gave a bitter smile. That's clever. She did not smile back. It's accurate. Paul stepped near the hallway, not touching, just present. Harlan looked at his father. Edward Harlan stood halfway, then stopped when Pike turned his head. No money crossed that distance for him. No board seat, no donor plaque. Harlan walked toward conference room 2 with the younger inspector beside him. At the doorway, he paused and looked back at me. For 1 second, I saw the boy inside the uniform, not innocent, just scared. He said, You could have told me. I answered. You could have asked. He had no answer for that. The door closed behind him. The lobby exhaled. Not all at once. First April, then Mrs. Palmer, then Voss, then the donor woman who had moved away from Edward Harlan. Bell came down from the podium and stood beside me. The packet was under his arm again, opened now, still heavy. He said, Ruth. My name in his mouth changed the room more than General had, not because it revealed everything, because it confirmed direction. I looked at the blue cloth. Bell followed my eyes. Not yet. I nodded. I know. He looked tired then, older than he had when he entered. Reeves made me promise I'd do this properly. He usually did. He said you'd resist. He usually knew. Bell's mouth moved, almost a smile. He kept the last copy. I closed my eyes for one breath. There it was, the line from the card, the line folded behind the signature, the line that had kept me awake. I opened my eyes. Then don't waste it. Bell's voice softened. I won't. Across the lobby, Lieutenant Saeed sent Benson down the hall in the wheelchair. His daughter walked beside him, one hand on his shoulder. As he passed me, Benson lifted 2 fingers from the armrest. Not a salute. Not exactly. A witness greeting another witness. Mrs. Palmer watched him go, then looked at me. Are you all right, dear? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because patients ask nurses that only when the world has turned upside down. I'm all right, I said. She nodded. Good. I still need you bossing people. Saeed called from the desk. Mrs. Delaney? I turned. She pointed at the triage screen. 2 walk-ins just hit red flags. Can you look from there? I stayed where I was, a few steps from the podium, with the blue cloth still covering the bronze. I looked over the lobby. A man by the vending machine held his left arm too still. A woman near the west chairs kept blinking hard and pressing 2 fingers to her temple. The prescription couple stood too close to the exit, uncertain and afraid to interrupt. The room was still happening. I inhaled once. Set it down straight. The man by the vending machine first, I said. Then the woman in gray. Ask the couple who drove. Don't let them leave yet. Saeed repeated it, already moving. Vending machine, gray sweater, couple by exit. April typed. Paul brought a wheelchair. Kenny cleared a path. The lobby worked because people stopped pretending one person could carry it alone. Bell stood beside me and watched them move. Then he said quietly, At 1200, we enter the full record. I looked at the covered plaque. The cloth did not move, but the morning had. At 11:31, Voss reached Columbus on the second ring. He did not use the speaker at first. Bell told him to. Voss looked at the phone as if it had become heavier. Then he pressed the button and set the receiver down. A woman's voice filled the front desk. Command office. Voss said, This is Deputy Director Voss at Liberty Ridge. Go ahead. I need to report a duty suspension. Bell stepped close enough to be heard. This is General Marcus Bell. There was a small pause. Yes, General. Record this as an immediate notification. Captain Grant Harlan's local patient flow duties are suspended pending command review. The voice changed, not louder, sharper. Reason? Bell looked at Alvarez. She said, Evidence preservation, altered lobby logs, questioned complaint closures, possible unauthorized export of internal wait time data. The command woman repeated it back. Every word sounded worse the second time. Then she asked, Is patient care affected? I looked toward Lieutenant Saeed. She was kneeling beside the man from the vending machine. His wife stood behind her with a purse strap clenched in both hands. Saeed called, Stable for transport, needs monitor. I said, Tell Columbus the lobby is still functioning. Bell repeated it. The woman said, Who has operational control? Bell nodded towards Saeed. Voss said, Lieutenant Saeed has intake authority. Name and rank? Voss gave it. There was typing on the other end. Fast. Official. Then the woman said, Do not allow Captain Harlan access to systems or staff without inspector presence. Harlan heard that through the conference room wall. We all did. His voice came through the door. This is absurd. No one answered him. That was when Edward Harlan made his second mistake. He stood beside the donors and raised his phone. I'm calling the board chair. General Pike turned around. Put it away. Edward stared at him. You don't command me. Pike did not move. No, but I can ask who you're warning. Edward's thumb stopped over the screen. Bell looked at him. Mr. Harlan, do not contact potential witnesses. I'm not a witness. Alvarez said. You received the export. Edward's face went stiff. I receive many reports. Then you're a witness. He lowered the phone, but he did not pocket it. Men like Edward liked holding something. A phone, a checkbook, a room. Bell said, Place it on the counter. Edward laughed once. You can't seize my property. Alvarez stepped closer. We're not seizing it. We're preserving the room. If you use it, I document interference. Edward looked at the donor woman. She looked away. That hurt him more than Pike did. He placed the phone face down on the counter. I had seen men do that before. They surrendered the object, not the habit. Lieutenant Saeed rolled the vending machine patient past us. His left hand had begun to tremble. His wife walked beside him. Ruth, Saeed said. I looked at the man's mouth, not drooping. His color had improved. Good catch, I said. Saeed shook her head. Yours. No, yours now. She heard the correction. Her eyes held mine for a second. Then she pushed the chair herself until Paul took over at the hallway. April stayed at the desk with both hands on the keyboard. She said, Lieutenant, the gray sweater is getting worse. Saeed turned. Where? West chairs. I pointed. Second row. She's hiding it. The woman in gray had one palm against her temple now. Her husband was trying to read the digital sign above the desk, as if numbers could explain pain. Saeed said, April, flag neuro. Kenny, clear west row. Kenny moved without looking at Harlan's door. That mattered. Earlier, everyone had checked the captain's face before acting. Now they checked the patient. Small changes save people. The younger inspector came out of conference room 2 with a tablet under his arm. Inspector Alvarez. She went to him. He kept his voice low, but not low enough. Captain Harlan is requesting counsel. He also says he needs to contact his father. Edward said, I'm right here. The inspector looked at Alvarez. Alvarez said, no contact. Edward snapped, he's my son. Bell said, then stop making it worse for him. That silenced the older man, not kindly, accurately. The inspector handed Alvarez the tablet. She read the screen, then looked toward the counter computer. Deputy Director, she said, who controls diversion status? Voss rubbed his forehead. Patient flow office enters it. Nursing confirms capacity. Can one person enter diversion without nursing confirmation? Voss hesitated. I knew the answer before he gave it. He said, technically, yes. Saeed heard him from the west chairs. She looked over her shoulder. Not clinically. Alvarez asked, has that happened this week? Voss said, I'd have to check. April turned in her chair. Her face had gone pale again. I know where, she said. Voss stared at her. April. She swallowed. I know where the diversion log is. Harlan's voice hit the door. April, don't. The whole lobby turned toward conference room 2. There it was, not a denial, a command. April's eyes filled, but her voice held. He told me it was just traffic language. Alvarez stepped toward her. Show me. April looked at me. I said, use your own hands. She nodded. She opened a tab on the intake computer. Her fingers moved through menus I had never been given access to. Staff board, capacity view, transfer notes, diversion archive. The screen loaded slowly. Saeed stood up from the gray sweater woman and called to Paul. Get her back now. Room 2 if it's open. If it isn't, make it open. Paul said, yes, ma'am. The gray sweater woman's husband said, is she okay? Saeed said, we're going to move fast. That was the right answer. It told him enough. April clicked a date, then another. A list appeared, red bars, yellow bars, short notes. Alvarez leaned in. Read the entry at 7:58. April's mouth trembled. Voss read it instead. Lobby triage saturated. Redirect non-urgent arrivals to County North. Entered by Garland, admin. Saeed came back to the desk. We were not saturated at 7:58. April clicked the attached note. My name appeared, not as a person, as a workaround. Temporary lobby support unavailable. Door control assigned. The slap had not only been pride, it had been useful to him. Bell read the line twice. Then he looked at me. I did not speak. Inside my head, I set it down straight. 7:58. Badge removed. Door control assigned. Redirection entered. A clean sequence. A dirty purpose. Voss whispered, my God. I said, don't bring God into your login. He flinched. I had not meant it kindly. Alvarez said, print it. April did. The printer coughed again. Harlan struck the conference room door with his palm. Not hard enough to break anything. Hard enough to remind us he was still there. You're misreading operational context, he said. General Harrow spoke for the first time in several minutes. Then explain it from the room. Alvarez looked at him. Harrow nodded. Open the door. Keep him there. The younger inspector opened conference room 2. Harlan stood just inside. His jacket was buttoned wrong now. One side sat higher than the other. Small things tell on a man. Alvarez said, Captain, did you enter diversion at 7:58? Harlan said, that depends on the status view. She held up the printout. He saw it. Yes, he said. Saeed said, I never confirmed saturation. Harlan looked past her. You were in exam 4. That means you ask me. You weren't available. Saeed's voice hardened. You didn't try. April said, he told me not to page you. Harlan turned on her. You are a clerk. Bell said, careful. Harlan stopped, but the word remained. Clerk, nurse, door help, nobody. He kept picking smaller names for people. Each one made him smaller. Alvarez asked, why was Mrs. Delaney marked unavailable? Harlan looked at me. She was removed from duty. By whom? By me. Why? He smiled without warmth. Conduct. The lobby knew the lie before he finished. Mrs. Palmer called from her chair. He hit her. The words came clean across the room. Harlan's face changed. He had counted on shame doing its old work. He had counted on me not naming it. He had not counted on Mrs. Palmer. Alvarez looked at the younger inspector. Add witness Palmer. Mrs. Palmer lifted her chin. First name Elaine. April typed it into a notes field before anyone asked. Bell turned toward Harlan. Captain, you removed a trained clinical veteran during an inspection window, marked her unavailable, and entered a diversion status without nursing confirmation. Harlan said, that is your framing. General Pike said, no, that's your timestamp. The reporter behind the rope called out, General, is patient diversion part of the investigation? Public Affairs opened her mouth, then closed it. Bell said, no comment. The reporter asked, Was a patient turned away? That question tightened the room. Not because we knew, because we did not. Alvarez turned to April. Pull arrivals after 7:58. April looked at Voss. Voss said, do it. She opened the walk-in arrival list. Names came up with times, reasons, dispositions. 8:04, checked in. 8:11, checked in. 8:17, redirected. April whispered, there. Alvarez leaned in. Name? April looked at the screen. Martin Choi. The complaint slip in Alvarez's hand suddenly weighed more than paper. Bell said, the Navy veteran. Voss closed his eyes. I looked toward the east doors. The hall had swallowed Benson, the gray sweater woman, and the man from the vending machine. The lobby chairs were still half full. A hospital is never one story at a time. Alvarez said, disposition note. April read it, each word slower than the last. Advised County North due to lobby saturation. Entered Garland, admin. Harlan said, that was appropriate. Voss opened his eyes. Martin Choi came back twice. Harlan looked at him. You don't know that. Voss said, I do. The deputy director reached under the counter and pulled out a thin blue folder. I had seen him touch that folder earlier and leave it alone. Now he placed it beside Reeves's packet. Alvarez said, what is that? Voss's hand stayed on top of it. Unresolved family contact. Bell said, you said his complaints were closed. Voss did not look at Harlan this time. They were closed in the system. And in the folder? Voss lifted his hand. The tab read, Choi Martin. Harlan said, Carl. Voss snapped, no. That one word cracked across the desk. Then Voss looked ashamed of how long it had taken. He opened the folder. There were 3 pages inside. One was printed on home paper, folded twice. One was a hospital call log. One was a sticky note with a time and a name. Voss pushed the folder to Alvarez. She brought it in herself, he said. His wife. I told Grant it needed review. Harlan said, it was reviewed. Voss looked at him. You told me the family misunderstood. They did. Then why did you close it under my meeting block? Harlan had no fast answer. That was new. Alvarez said, explain. Voss pointed to the call log. I was in Columbus from 10 to noon that day. My login was active here. I didn't close anything. Bell's face went still. Alvarez asked, who had your credentials? Voss looked like a man finding a stain on his own sleeve. My assistant had the sealed password card. April looked up fast. No, I didn't use it. Voss shook his head. Not you. The lobby waited. He said, Captain Harlan requested emergency access for donor readiness. Edward Harlan stood from his chair. This is becoming defamatory. General Harrow said, sit down. Edward stayed standing. Harrow took 1 step toward him. Edward sat. Alvarez asked Voss, did you authorize shared credential use? Voss swallowed. I allowed it. Written? No. Why? Voss glanced at Edward, then at Harlan. Pressure. Edward said, don't you dare. Voss looked at him. You called me at home. Edward's jaw tightened. You said Grant's packet couldn't take another failed metric. You said the hospital couldn't take another public wait time story. I said protect the institution. You said protect him. Silence. Not quiet, silent. The donor woman stood. Edward, did you know? Edward did not answer her. That answered her. She picked up her purse. Bell said, ma'am, please remain available. She nodded. I'm not leaving. I'm changing seats. She moved to the row behind Mrs. Palmer. Mrs. Palmer patted the chair beside her. Plenty of room. The donor woman sat down there, stiff and embarrassed. Mrs. Palmer said, first decent choice all morning. The woman almost smiled. Then she looked at the floor. Harlan stepped into the doorway farther than the inspector liked. The younger inspector lifted a hand. "Stay inside." Harlan ignored him and looked at Bell. "Sir, this has gone beyond scope." Bell said, "It keeps finding scope." "You came for a dedication." "I came for a record." Harlan's eyes flicked to the blue cloth. He still did not understand that it was not the prize. It was the receipt. He said, "Then read it." Bell did not move. Harlan pointed at the packet. "Read whatever Reeves wrote. If I'm so wrong, read it." My chest tightened. Not fear, timing. Some men will set fire to a room just to say they found the light. Bell's voice stayed calm. "Not at your pace." Harlan laughed. "Convenient." General Pike stepped beside Bell. "Captain, you're mistaking restraint for weakness." Harlan looked at the cameras. He knew they were hungry now. He said, "The public deserves transparency." Alvarez said, "The public deserves unaltered records." He turned on her. "You're building a spectacle." I spoke then. "No." Harlan looked at me. "Of course you have something to say." "I have one thing." Bell watched me. I did not look at the cameras. I looked at Harlan. "You wanted the record read because you think records are speeches." He sneered. "And what are they?" "Receipts." That landed. Not loudly, cleanly. April looked down at the printer tray. Another page had finished. Alvarez took it. Her brow changed. Bell saw it. "Inspector?" She handed him the page. He read the top line, then the bottom. General Harrow leaned in. Bell said, "This is not from today." Alvarez said, "No." Voss asked, "What is it?" Bell looked at April. "Where did this come from?" April said, "The linked archive. I printed the Choi disposition. It printed the attached protocol note, too." Harlan's face drained a shade. I noticed. So did Bell. Alvarez said, "Captain." Harlan said, "It's a template." Bell read the header. "Emergency Lobby Surge Protocol, adapted from Forward Surgical Evacuation Intake Model, revised for Liberty Ridge." The room shifted toward the paper. Not me. The paper. That was safer for them. Bell continued, "Source reference, Delaney Field Triage Sequence, Reeves Memorandum, 2007. My hand moved to the metal pin before I told it to. Harlan saw the movement. For once he looked directly at the pin. He still did not know what it meant, but he knew it had entered the room without asking him. Alvarez asked, "Why is Mrs. Delaney's name on your protocol template?" Harlan said, "It's legacy language." Saeed came back from the hall. "No, it isn't." Everyone turned. She held a laminated sheet in one hand. "I pulled this from intake," she said. "It's the checklist we use during crowding." Bell took it. Saeed pointed. 3 steps. Stand, scan, separate. Red risk first. Confused family second. Paperwork last. She looked at me. "That's Ruth's sequence." Harlan said, "It's standard triage." I said no. The word surprised even me. Harlan's mouth tightened. "Excuse me?" "It isn't standard." Bell looked at me, but he did not interrupt. I said, "Standard triage starts when a patient reaches you. That one starts when a patient enters the room." Saeed nodded. "Exactly." I pointed to the lobby doors. It was built for places without enough doors, enough hands, or enough time. No one spoke. I had said more than I meant to. I stopped there. Bell folded the protocol note once and slid it under his hand. Harlan watched that page disappear under Bell's palm. He understood then that the document chain did not end at wait times. It led somewhere older, somewhere he had borrowed from without reading. Alvarez said, "Captain, did you submit this protocol in your promotion packet?" Harlan did not answer fast enough. Voss turned toward him. "Grant." Harlan said, "I referenced operational improvements." Did you claim authorship? No. Alvarez asked, Did you cite Mrs. Delaney? He looked at me with sudden hate. No. Bell's voice lowered. Did you cite Colonel Reeves? Harlan said nothing. Pike muttered, There it is. Alvarez wrote again. Harlan stepped back into conference room 2. The younger inspector closed the door halfway. Not all the way. He was learning too. At 11:46, Columbus called back. This time, Voss put it on speaker before anyone told him. The same woman said, Deputy Director, command requests preservation of Captain Harlan's promotion packet. Harlan shouted through the doorway. On what basis? The command woman heard him. Her voice cooled. On the basis that he is in the room. Bell said, Command, this is Bell. Yes, General. Add protocol attribution review. A pause. Say again. Bell looked at the paper under his hand. Protocol attribution review. Delaney field triage sequence. Reeves memorandum, 2007. Possible unauthorized career use claim. The typing stopped on the other end, then resumed. Entered, she said. Harlan came to the doorway again. His face was different now, not angry first, afraid first. Sir, he said, that's not necessary. Bell looked at him. Now you know what necessary feels like. Harlan's eyes moved from Bell to me. For the first time that morning, he did not call me anything. No nurse, no door help, no nobody. That silence did not absolve him. It only showed he could count. April whispered from the desk, Lieutenant Saeed? Saeed turned. What? Mrs. Choi is here. The lobby doors had opened so quietly I had missed them. A woman stood just inside from the East Mercer Road entrance. She wore a brown coat, too warm for July, and held a folder against her chest. Her eyes moved across the cameras, the generals, the covered plaque, the counter. Then they found Voss. You told me someone would call, she said. Voss went very still. Mrs. Choi stepped farther into the lobby. I waited, she said. Nobody called. I'm sorry, Voss said. Mrs. Choi looked at him. That isn't a call. No one moved toward her at first. That was the shame of it. Everybody knew she carried more than paper, and nobody wanted to be the first to touch it. Saeed moved first. Mrs. Choi, she said, come sit down. I stood last time. Then sit this time. Mrs. Choi looked at her. Then she nodded once. Saeed led her to the first row, not the side chairs. Front row, in sight of the counter, in sight of Harlan's door. Mrs. Palmer shifted her purse. Here, honey. Mrs. Choi sat beside her and held the folder tight. Voss came around the desk. His shoes sounded too loud. Mrs. Choi, I failed you. She did not blink. You told me that before. I know. You said, we'll review it. I remember. You said, Grant is thorough. Voss closed his eyes for 1 second. I said that. Mrs. Choi opened her folder. Her hands were steady. That mattered. Grief can shake a voice and still leave the hands exact. She took out a copy of an intake slip. He came here at 8:17. Alvarez stepped closer. May I see that? Mrs. Choi held it out. Alvarez took it with both hands. I liked her for that. Mrs. Choi said, he was told to go north. Voss said, County North. He didn't know County North. Saeed pulled a chair near her. Did he drive himself? Mrs. Choi nodded. He said he was fine. People say that when they are scared. They say it to spare you. They say it because being a burden feels worse than pain. I set it down straight. 8:17, redirected, Navy veteran, no nurse eyes on him. Alvarez looked at the slip. This copy has a handwritten note. Mrs. Choi said, Martin wrote it. Bell asked, what does it say? Alvarez read it softly. Lady at door sent me back once before, not there today. My breath stopped in my chest. Not long, enough. Harlan's door opened wider. That proves nothing. Mrs. Choi looked toward him. It proves he looked for her. Harlan said, "Ma'am, I'm sorry for your loss, but this is not evidence." Belle turned so slowly that even Harlan stopped. "Captain," Belle said, "stay silent." Harlan's mouth opened. "Now," Belle said. The word was not loud. It carried anyway. Mrs. Choi looked at me for the first time. "Were you the lady?" I said, "Yes." Her face changed, not anger first, recognition first. "He said you made him sit the week before." "I did. He was mad." "I know." She looked down at the slip. "He said you saved him a fall." I remembered him then, blue cap, navy patch, left hand cold, right hand trying to hide it. He had argued about leaving his truck at the curb. I had told him trucks could wait better than hearts could. "I remember him," I said. Mrs. Choi's eyes filled, but she kept her back straight. "Then why weren't you there?" The answer was in the room. Nobody wanted to say it. Harlan had said it already. Door help? Nobody. Unavailable. Belle looked at Alvarez. "Place that with the log." Alvarez put the slip beside the printout. 2 papers. One official, one from a kitchen table. They said the same thing in different languages. Voss whispered, "I should have called." Mrs. Choi looked at him. "Yes." No one rescued him from that. He did not deserve rescue. The younger inspector came out of conference room 2. "Captain Harlan's counsel is on the phone." Belle said, "Not here." "He says he's entitled to representation." "He is," Alvarez said. "He's not entitled to control the room." Harlan called from inside, "You can't freeze my packet without command review." The speakerphone on the desk still sat open to Columbus. The woman on the line said, "Captain Harlan, command review is active." That shut him up. For a moment, the lobby returned to breath and wheels. Paul came out of room 2 and leaned toward Saeed. "Gray sweater is stable. Transport's coming." "Good," Saeed said. "Keep the husband with her." "He's asking about the cameras. Tell him to look at his wife." Paul nodded and went back. That was hospital work. One hand on history, one hand on pulse. Belle picked up Reeves's packet. Harlan saw it. His face tightened. "Sir," he said, quieter now. "Please don't open that in front of press." Belle looked at him. "You asked me to read it." "Not under these circumstances." "These are the circumstances." Edward Harlan stood again. He had not learned. Men like that confuse volume with standing. "General Belle," he said, "this hospital has donors, obligations, and legal exposure. You are turning a dedication into a trial." Belle did not look at him. "No." Edward's face reddened. "No? This was always a record." The donor woman beside Mrs. Palmer looked up. "Edward, sit down." He stared at her. She said, "You're embarrassing us." That landed harder than Belle's command. Edward sat. Mrs. Palmer patted the woman's knee once. "Took you long enough." The woman said, "Yes." It was the only apology she had in her. For now, it was enough. Belle held the sealed packet with both hands. It had Reeves's name across the front. Colonel Daniel Reeves, United States Army, retired. The black ink had faded at the edges, but his signature had not. My throat tightened. Reeves kept the last copy. I had said that once to myself at my kitchen table. I had not known he had put it here. I had thought he meant my old file. I had thought he meant memory. Reeves always did hate loose ends. Belle looked at me. "Mrs. Delaney." I said, "General." "You may sit." "No." He nodded. He understood. Saeed moved beside me, not in front, beside. General Harrow stood on Bell's left. General Pike stood on his right. The fourth general, Admiral Jonas, had stayed near the plaque most of the morning, quiet and severe. He now stepped forward until all four of them formed a line behind the packet. The cameras lifted. Public Affairs whispered, "General, we should move to the podium." Bell said, "No podium. But the ceremony placement is marked." Bell looked at the blue cloth over the bronze plaque. "This is the placement." Harlan came out of conference room 2. The younger inspector caught his sleeve. "Captain." Harlan shook him off. "If you read that, I want my objection noted." Alvarez said, "Noted." "I object to incomplete context." Noted. "I object to defamatory implication." Noted. "I object to spectacle." Bell looked at him. Noted. Then Bell broke the seal. The sound was small, paper tearing, nothing more. Still, every person in that lobby heard it. Inside was a cream folder, a typed citation, a photograph, and a second envelope with Reeves's handwriting across it. Bell set the photograph face down. He did not use it yet. He read the top line. "Dedication nomination file. Liberty Ridge Veterans Medical Center, Millbrook, Ohio." Harlan stared at the folder like he could will it blank. Bell continued. "Submitted by Colonel Daniel Reeves, United States Army, retired. Signed February 4th, 2025. February 4th, 3 weeks before Reeves's last card reached me." Bell turned the first page. Nominee, Ruth Ann Delaney. My full name moved through the lobby. Not nurse, not old woman, not door help. Ruth Ann Delaney. Bell read on. Rank at retirement, Master Sergeant, United States Army, Service Branch, Army Nurse Corps Attached Medical Support, total federal service, 38 years. A reporter whispered, "That's her?" Mrs. Palmer said, "Hush." Bell did not pause. Primary recognition basis. Development and field execution of the Delaney forward intake sequence, first documented under Colonel Reeves during the 2007 evacuation of Surgical Unit 17. Harlan looked at Voss. Voss did not look back. Bell read the next line more slowly. Sequence known by staff summary as stand, scan, separate. Red risk first, confused family second, paperwork last. Saeed made a sound beside me. Small, not surprise, confirmation. Bell lifted the laminated sheet from the desk and held it beside the citation. Same words, same order, same bones. Harlan said, "That phrase is common." General Pike turned. "Captain, you're done speaking." Harlan stopped. Bell read from the citation. On May 12, 2007, Master Sergeant Delaney maintained intake order during a compromised evacuation period, identifying critical risk before formal admission and preserving transfer priority for 46 wounded soldiers. Nobody breathed loudly. 46. Numbers can be cold until they are names. Reeves had known all 46. So had I, in pieces. Boots, tags, breathing. One boy asking for his mother. One captain asking if his men went first. A medic who kept apologizing because he could not stand. I did not go there in my face. Inside, I set it down straight. Bell continued. Her method was later adapted into civilian lobby surge practice for Liberty Ridge Veterans Medical Center, with attribution required in all training and administrative use. Alvarez's pen stopped. "Attribution required," she repeated. Bell looked at Harlan. "There's your context." Harlan's lips parted, but nothing came. Bell turned another page. Colonel Reeves adds the following statement. He unfolded a sheet. I knew Reeves's typing before I heard it. He always left 2 spaces after a period. He said old habits had rank. Bell read, Ruth Delaney will not nominate herself. She will not correct a room for forgetting her. She will work the door if the door is where patients are missed. My eyes burned. I kept my hands still. Bell read, "That humility is not consent to erasure. Liberty Ridge used her field sequence for 11 years. It should now name the person who built it." Mrs. Choi pressed her folder against her chest. Bell read, "If this packet is opened after my death, read it in the lobby. Do not move it upstairs. Do not let a committee soften it. The work happened at the threshold. So should the record." The donor woman covered her mouth. Edward Harlan stared at the floor. Bell lowered the page. Then he picked up the photograph and turned it around. It showed a younger woman in dusty green, hair tucked under a cap, one hand on a clipboard, one hand raised toward men carrying a stretcher. The image was blurred at the edges. My face was thinner. My mouth was set. The pin on my cardigan came from that day, though the cardigan came years later. Admiral Jonas looked at the photograph, then at my pin. He came to attention. General Harrow followed. General Pike followed. Bell folded the paper and stood straight. 4 generals faced me in the lobby of Liberty Ridge Veterans Medical Center and saluted. The room changed. Not loud. Changed. Every chair seemed to know it, every badge, every clipboard, every camera. I did not salute back at first. I was not in uniform. Old rules rise even when the body is tired. Bell kept his hand up. "Master Sergeant Delaney," he said. My hand came up then, slow, exact, returned. The lobby held it. Then Bell dropped his hand and turned to Harlan. He said, "Captain, she is not nobody here." Nobody. There it was. The word came back, wearing the record. Harlan looked smaller than he had at 8 o'clock. His rank was still on his chest. His father was still in the room. His packet was still somewhere in Columbus. None of it reached him. Bell placed Reeves's citation on the counter beside the altered wait time log and Mrs. Choi's intake slip. 3 papers: service, alteration, cost. Alvarez stepped forward. "Captain Grant Harlan, you are relieved from patient flow authority pending formal review." Harlan said, "You don't have that authority." Bell said, "I do for this dedication board." Alvarez said, "I do for this facility investigation." The speakerphone added, "Command concurs." Harlan turned toward Voss. "Carl." Voss shook his head. "No. Tell them. I already did." Edward stood halfway. "Grant, don't say another word." For once, he gave useful advice. Harlan did not take it. "This is politics," he said. "All of it. An old file, a sentimental ceremony, a grieving spouse, and a nurse who couldn't follow a chain of command." Saeed stepped forward. "She followed the patient." Harlan snapped, "You're out of line." Bell said, "No, you are out of a job." The words hit the lobby with no drama around them. No raised voice, no flourish. A career does not always end with a shout. Sometimes it ends when every door stops opening. Alvarez nodded to the younger inspector. "Remove his access badge." Harlan backed up 1 step. "Absolutely not." "Badge," Alvarez said. "You can't strip me in public." Mrs. Palmer said, "You managed it fine with her. That cut clean." The younger inspector held out his hand. Harlan looked at it, then at the cameras. His fingers went to his badge. He did not unclip it at first. General Pike said, "Captain." Harlan pulled it free and slapped it into the inspector's palm. The sound made April flinch. I noticed. So did Harlan. For the first time all morning, his face changed for someone else's fear. Small, late, real enough to see. Alvarez said, "Your system credentials are suspended. Your promotion packet is frozen. Your diversion entries are preserved." The Columbus voice said, "Confirmed. Freeze entered at 12:04. 12:04. I wrote it in my head without paper." Harlan looked at April. "I didn't mean for you to get dragged in." April stared at the keyboard. "You told me I was just a clerk. I was angry. You were using me. He had no answer. She looked at Alvarez. I'll give a statement. Alvarez said, thank you. Harlan turned to me last. That was fitting. He had put me last all morning. His mouth worked once before words came. Mrs. Delaney. I waited. He swallowed. I shouldn't have struck you. The lobby tightened around the word. Struck. At last. I said, no. He nodded, too fast. No. That is not the whole sentence. His eyes lifted. I said, say what you did after. He looked at the floor. Bell did not help him. No one did. Harlan said, I removed you from triage. And? I marked you unavailable. And? I entered diversion. Mrs. Choi's hand closed around Martin's slip. Harlan saw it. That was the first useful thing his eyes had done all day. He faced her. Mrs. Choi, I'm sorry. She did not answer quickly. Then she said, I'm not your first stop. He looked confused. She pointed at me. You started there. Harlan turned back. I could have made him kneel in that room without asking. Shame wanted that. It would have been easy, but easy is not always clean. I said, an apology is not treatment. He nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. Don't ma'am me to get past it. His face colored. Yes. You put speed over sight. Yes. You put your file over a patient. He closed his eyes. Yes. Mrs. Choi looked away. That was enough for her for now, maybe forever. Alvarez said, Captain, come with me. The younger inspector opened a path to the side hall. No cuffs, no theater. Just a man without a badge walking past the people he had counted as furniture. As Harlan passed April, he slowed. I'm sorry, he said. April's voice shook. I'll put that in the note. He nodded once and kept walking. Edward rose, then stopped when Bell looked at him. Bell said, You can follow counsel. You can't follow him into this review. Edward's hands opened at his sides. He's my son. Bell said, Then let him answer as one. Edward sat back down as if the chair had finally earned weight. The inspectors took Harlan down the corridor toward administration. His shoes faded past the vending machine, past the East Hall, past the room where Benson had been taken. The lobby did not clap. It did not cheer. Good. This was not entertainment. It was correction. Voss stood behind the counter with both hands flat on the laminate. He looked at the 3 papers in front of him. I need to call legal, he said. Bell said, You need to call staffing first. Voss blinked. Saeed said, We're short 2 nurses and 1 intake clerk. Voss looked at the lobby. For the first time that morning, he seemed to see it as a place where bodies waited, not numbers. Right, he said. Staffing first. He picked up the phone. Mrs. Choi stood. Who reviews Martin's file now? Alvarez said, I do. No. Alvarez paused. Mrs. Choi pointed to the papers. Not alone. I want nursing in it. Saeed said, I'll sit in. Mrs. Choi looked at me. And her. Every face turned. I felt the old pull. Fill the gap. Fix the hole. Stand where the system had failed and let it lean on my spine again. I had done that for years. Too many. I looked at Martin Choi's slip, then at Reeves's citation, then at the blue cloth. I said, no. Mrs. Choi's face fell. I stepped toward her. Not because he doesn't matter. She held still. Because I'm evidence today. Not staff. Bell's eyes softened. I said, Lieutenant Saeed can review it. Inspector Alvarez can preserve it. I'll give my statement. Mrs. Choi looked at Saeed. Saeed said, I'll do it right. Mrs. Choi nodded. Then do it now. Saeed stood. Conference room 1. Alvarez gathered the Choi folder and the log copy. Mrs. Choi, this way. Mrs. Palmer touched Mrs. Choi's sleeve. I'll keep your seat. Mrs. Choi almost smiled. Thank you. They walked toward conference room 1. Paul came out of the hall and stepped aside for them. He saw Belle's open folder on the counter and froze. Is that Mrs. Delaney? He asked. Belle said, yes. Paul looked at me. Master Sergeant? I said, Ruth works. He shook his head once. Not today, it doesn't. That almost broke me. Not because of pride. Because he was young enough to still think naming a thing could protect it. Maybe he was right. Public affairs moved near Belle. General, do we uncover the plaque? Belle looked at me. Mrs. Delaney? The blue cloth waited at the wall. The locked bronze under it had been in my sight all morning. I had thought it was for a donor, a wing, a campaign, a name that paid for better chairs. I said, not yet. Public affairs looked startled. Not yet? There are patients in chairs. Saeed heard me from the conference room doorway. She smiled once, tired and quick. I've got Choi. Paul said, I've got the west side. April wiped her face with the back of her hand and sat straighter. I've got arrivals. Voss lowered the phone. Staffing is sending 2 float nurses. I looked at him. He added, and I'm open in overflow. Now, I said. Now, he said. Belle closed Reeves's packet, but he left the citation on top, not hidden, not covered. Then he stepped beside me and lowered his voice. Ruth, he said, Reeves told me you might refuse. He knew me. He said to ask only once. I looked at him. Ask what? Belle glanced toward the small desk near the plaque. It had been draped with a white cover and a vase no one had filled with water. After today, he said, not lobby duty, advisory authority, written, paid, with power to stop intake when it's unsafe. I almost laughed. It would have sounded wrong, so I did not. Marcus, I said, I'm tired. I know. I'm 64. I read the file. I don't want a title that lets them ignore hiring. Then write that into the terms. He held my eyes. He was not offering kindness. He was offering leverage. That was different. I said, one condition. Name it. Saeed signs the protocol revisions. Belle looked toward conference room 1. Done. And April gets protected. Done. And Martin Choi's review stays public to his family. Belle nodded. Done. I said, you agreed too fast. Reeves warned me about that too. This time I did smile, small, against my will. Belle opened the second envelope from Reeves. I raised a hand. Don't. He stopped. Not in the lobby, I said. Belle studied me. This one is personal. I know. Then when? I looked at the east doors, where summer light came in hard across the tile. Millbrook traffic moved beyond the glass. East Mercer Road did not care what had happened inside. Roads never do. I said, after the patients. Belle tucked the envelope back into the folder. After the patients, he said. At the counter, April answered the phone. Liberty Ridge intake, she said. Her voice shook once, then settled. Yes, sir. If you're having chest pressure, don't drive. I'm getting a nurse now. She looked up, not at Harlan's door, at Saeed's door. Small changes save people. I moved back from the counter and stood beside the covered plaque. My cheek still ached where the morning had started. My hand still found the metal pin. The pin was no longer a secret. The work was no longer borrowed. And in conference room 1, Mrs. Choi began to speak while Alvarez turned on the recorder. The recorder light turned red behind the glass of conference room 1. I stayed where I was, near the covered plaque, because standing there did not require a badge. It required only legs and breath. Both were tired, but both still worked. Belle stood beside me for a moment longer. You should sit, he said. I will. When? When the room does. He looked across the lobby. The room had not sat down. People were still upright in small clusters, speaking low, turning toward the counter, watching the hallway where Harlan had gone. Nobody knew what to do with justice after it entered a place that had been running on habit. Belle said, "Then I'll stand too." I said, "That isn't necessary." "No," he said, "it isn't." He stayed. Voss came out from behind the counter with the phone still in his hand. His face had changed from pale to practical. That was better. Pale does not move patients. "Float nurses are 6 minutes out," he said. "Overflow is opening in Clinic C." "Who's walking the chairs?" I asked. He looked toward Paul. Paul lifted his hand. "I am." "Not alone," I said. Voss turned to a security officer. "Mendez, help West Row." Mendez nodded. "Yes, sir." I looked at April. She had one hand on the phone and one hand on the keyboard. Her shoulders were still high. "April," I said. She looked up. "Breathe before you type." She nodded once. "I'm trying." "Try slower." She closed her eyes for half a second. Then she answered the next call. "Liberty Ridge intake. Are you safe right now?" That was better than hold. Small changes save people. Mrs. Palmer crossed the lobby with her purse tucked under one arm. She stopped in front of me and looked at my cheek. She did not reach for it. Good woman. "You need ice," she said. "I need the left row cleared first." "You need ice," Belle said. Mrs. Palmer outranks me on that. I almost smiled again. "Does she?" Mrs. Palmer opened her purse and pulled out a wrapped cold pack from the pharmacy downstairs. "I have knees," she said. "I plan ahead." She cracked it between both hands. The sound was sharp. 3 people looked over. Nobody flinched this time. She handed it to me. "Hold it there." I took it. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," she said. "I'm still mad." "So am I." She nodded. That answer suited her. Across the lobby, Paul knelt beside a man in a faded navy cap. He did not touch the man's arm until he asked. I saw that. He had learned it somewhere in the last hour. "Sir," Paul said, "can I move you to Clinic C?" The man said, "Am I being bumped?" "No, sir, you're being seen." The man blinked at him. "That still happens here?" Paul's jaw tightened. "It does now." Belle heard it. So did Voss. Voss looked down at his shoes. I had no interest in his shame unless it produced staffing. The side doors opened and 2 float nurses came in fast. One was young, one was not. Both wore clipped badges and faces that had already read the room. The older one said, "Who's charge?" Saeed stepped out from conference room 1. "For intake, I am." The float nurse looked at Voss. Voss said, "She is." That mattered. Saeed pointed to the West Row. "Clinic C. Chest pressure, short breath, confusion, new weakness. Everyone else stays ordered." The young float nurse said, "Got it." Saeed looked at April. "Print the new list." April's fingers moved. "Already coming." Paper began to spit from the printer. Normal sounds returned first. Printer, shoes, phone, chair legs. The lobby did not heal all at once. No place does. It just started doing the next correct thing. Alvarez came out with Mrs. Choi's folder against her chest. "Mrs. Delaney," she said, "I need your statement soon." "You'll have it." "Before Harlan's counsel arrives." Bell turned his head. "He called counsel already?" Alvarez said. "His father did." Of course he had. Edward Harlan stood near the donor chairs with his phone at his ear. He was not speaking now. He was listening. His eyes kept moving to the citation on the counter. Bell said, "Inspector, what do you need first?" Alvarez looked at me. "Timeline, exact times if she has them." I reached into the pocket of my cardigan and pulled out the folded visitor map. The creases were soft from my hand. The back was covered in my writing. Alvarez stared at it. I said, 8:17, first unsafe separation order, 8:21. Benson almost fell, 8:22. Strike, 8:24. Badge removed, 8:31. Harlan told April to mark me unavailable, 8:46. Diversion entered, 9:12. Mrs. Choi arrived, 9:20. Martin Choi file marked non-urgent without nursing review. Alvarez did not take the map at first. Then she held out both hands. May I? Yes. She took it carefully. This is evidence. It was a map. It's evidence now. Bell said, Reeves said you wrote on whatever was closest. He complained about it. He admired it. Those were often the same thing with him. Bell's face moved, but he did not laugh. Not there. Alvarez read the map again. You included bed numbers. I could see the board reflection in the glass. She looked toward the glass panel behind intake. The monitor faced away from the lobby. In the morning sun, the numbers had shone faintly on the framed poster beside it. Alvarez said, From there? Yes. Voss looked at the poster, then at me. You read that? I read what's given. He looked as if someone had taken away a wall he trusted. The younger inspector returned from the hall alone. Harlan was not with him. Alvarez asked, Where is he? In Administration Conference 2. Counsel is on speaker. Did he surrender his phone? Yes. Laptop? Secured. Badge? He held it up in a plastic sleeve. Grant Harlan's badge looked cheap without his chest behind it. April saw it and looked away. The younger inspector said, He asked for his father. Alvarez said, He can ask. Edward crossed the lobby too quickly. Inspector. Alvarez turned. My counsel is en route, he said. I don't want this turning into a public hanging. Bell looked at him. Then stop bringing rope. Edward's mouth shut. Alvarez said, Your son's review is in administration. This lobby remains an active care area. If you interfere with either, I'll have security remove you. Edward looked at Voss. Carl. Voss did not rescue him. She's right. That was the first time I had heard Voss say that without checking the room first. Edward lowered his voice. You know what this could do. Voss said, Yes. To the center. To patients, Voss said. Edward stared at him. Voss kept going. To patients first. Bell stepped closer to Edward. Not threatening. Present. Your foundation name is on a wall downstairs, Bell said. Her protocol kept people alive at this threshold. Today, one of those carried more weight. Edward looked at me then. He was not angry in the same clean way his son had been. His was older, more practiced. It had places to hide. He said, Mrs. Delaney, I didn't know. I held the cold pack to my cheek. No, I said. You didn't ask. His eyes dropped. Good. One apology was enough. I did not need another. The conference room door opened wider. Mrs. Choi stood inside, with Saeed beside her and the recorder still running on the table. Saeed said, Martin's file needs physician review now. Voss said, I'll call Dr. Kent. Saeed said, I already did. He's coming down. Voss stopped. Good. Mrs. Choi looked across the lobby at me. Her face was drawn, but her voice held. They changed the word, she said. Everyone close enough heard it. Alvarez turned. Mrs. Choi. No, Mrs. Choi said. They should hear this. Saeed did not stop her. Mrs. Choi held up a copied page. My husband's first note said sudden weakness. The version sent back said general fatigue. April made a small sound at the desk. Voss took one step forward. Who changed it? Saeed said, That's being pulled. Alvarez looked at the younger inspector. Audit trail. He turned on his heel and went back to the desk. Edward rubbed his forehead. This is not the place. Mrs. Choi faced him. It became the place when the lobby decided my husband could wait. That sentence landed harder than anger. Bell said, "She's right." Mrs. Choi lowered the page. "I don't care about your plaque. I care that he was read wrong." I stepped away from the wall. "So do I," said. Her eyes found mine. I said, "That's why the plaque waits." She nodded once. "Then wait." Doctor. Kent came through the East Hall at a quick walk. He had a white coat over scrubs and a paper cup he forgot to set down. "Where's Choi?" he asked. Saeed said, "Observation 2. "Who's with him?" "Benson's nurse until you arrive." Dr. Kent looked at the page in Mrs. Choi's hand. "Bring that." Mrs. Choi followed him at once. Before she passed me, she stopped. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For asking you to carry it." I said, "You were scared." "I still am." "I know." She went on. That was the only reconciliation I needed from her. It was not even reconciliation. It was truth-changing hands. The lobby flow picked up after that. Not pretty. Real. The West Row cleared by half. Clinic C took 4 patients. The young float nurse moved fast and asked good questions. The older one caught an oxygen tank before it tipped. April printed wristbands with both hands steady now. Paul came back to the desk with sweat at his temples. "Mrs. Delaney," he said, "West Row is down to 6. "Who's left?" 2 scheduled, 1 medication question, 1 discharge ride, 1 walker repair. 1 man who says he's fine but keeps rubbing his jaw. I looked at him. He already knew. "I moved him up," Paul said. "Nurse is checking him." "Good." He swallowed. "I almost missed him." "You didn't." "I would have this morning." I did not soften it. "Yes." He nodded. "I won't again." "You will miss something someday." His face tightened. I said, "That's why you build a system that catches what you miss." Paul looked at the covered plaque, then at the laminated intake sheet. "Stand, scan, separate," he said. "Red risk first," I said. "Confused family second. Paperwork last." He repeated it under his breath, not for me, for himself. The younger inspector returned with a tablet. "Inspector Alvarez," he said. "Audit trail on Choi note." Alvarez moved toward him. Bell and Voss followed. So did Edward, until Mendez stepped in his path. "Sir," Mendez said, "stay back." Edward looked ready to object. Then he saw the cameras still near the donor chairs. He stayed back. Alvarez read from the tablet. Original entry at 9:13 by April Wynn. Sudden left-sided weakness reported by spouse. Needs nursing eyes. Modified at 9:18 by Grant Harlan. New text, general fatigue per family. Routine wait. April stood up so fast her chair rolled back. "I didn't write that," she said. Alvarez said, "The audit shows that." April put one hand over her mouth. "He used my note." Saeed came out from the hall. "Dr. Kent has Martin in imaging priority." Mrs. Choi was not with her. Good. She was with her husband. Alvarez handed Saeed the tablet. Saeed read it. Her face went still. Voss said, "Can that be reversed?" Saeed looked at him. "The note? Yes. The delay? No." No one had a useful answer. Bell said, "Add it to the review." Alvarez said, "Already done." The Columbus speakerphone on the desk crackled. Someone had never hung up. The command voice returned. "Inspector Alvarez, command requests verbal update." Alvarez picked up the receiver. "You're on speaker in the lobby." "Understood. Status?" Alvarez looked at me once, then at Voss. "Captain Harlan relieved from patient flow authority. Badge and systems access suspended. Promotion packet frozen. Altered entries preserved. Additional patient note alteration identified in the CHOI file. The line was quiet for 2 beats. Then the voice said, "Repeat that last item." Alvarez repeated it. The voice said, "Initiate expanded audit for all same-day triage modifications under Harlan credentials." Voss closed his eyes. Bell said, "How far back?" The voice answered, "Since his assignment began." Voss opened his eyes again. "That's 6 months." Alvarez said, "Then 6 months." Edward stepped forward. "That is excessive." The speakerphone said, "Identify speaker." Edward stopped. Bell said, "Edward Harlan, board donor." The voice changed. Not louder, cleaner. "Mr. Harlan, this is not a board matter." Edward said, "Everything here is a board matter." The voice said, "Not today. Not today." That phrase moved through me with more force than the salute had. People always think authority is loud. Real authority often sounds like a door locking. Edward sat down. The young reporter near Mrs. Palmer raised his camera. Bell turned. "No patient names." The reporter lowered it. "Understood." Bell pointed to the citation. "You can record that." The reporter looked at me, asking without speaking. I said, "Record the protocol, not my face." He nodded. That was enough. At 12:31, Dr. Kent returned to the lobby alone. Mrs. Choi was still in back. I watched his face before he spoke. "Doctors think they hide news. They rarely do." Saeed met him halfway. He said, "He's stable. We're transferring him to Columbus for specialist care." Saeed let out one breath. I looked at April. She was crying without noise. "Doctor," Kent said. The delay wasn't helpful. Nobody pretended otherwise. "But he's talking," he said. He asked for his wife. The lobby took that in, not relief, not fully, a chance. Saeed pressed her fingers to her eyes, then dropped her hand. "Thank you." Dr. Kent looked at me. "Mrs. Delaney." "Yes." "He told his wife to tell you he didn't like being trouble." "That sounds like him." "You know him?" "I know men who say that." Dr. Kent nodded. "He's lucky she kept pushing." "No," I said. "She did her job." He accepted the correction. "She did." Bell looked at the covered plaque. "Ruth." I knew what he was asking. Patients were moving. The immediate danger had been answered. The record had been read. The room had seen enough to understand why the cloth mattered. Public Affairs hovered near the wall with both hands folded around a program she no longer knew how to use. I said, "No speeches." Bell said, "Agreed." "No ribbon." "Agreed." No pretending this morning was part of it. Bell's eyes held mine. "Agreed." I looked at April. "Can you leave the desk for 1 minute?" She glanced at Voss. Voss said, "Yes, I'll cover." April almost laughed, but it broke before it became sound. Paul came in from the west row. Saeed stood near conference room 1. Mrs. Palmer stayed by her chair. Edward remained seated, and for once he did not try to own the center of the room. Bell nodded to Public Affairs. She stepped to the blue cloth. The lobby did not gather like an audience. It turned like a workplace pausing between tasks. "That was right," Bell said. Colonel Reeves asked for the record to be placed at the threshold. He stopped there. Public Affairs pulled the cloth down. The bronze plaque caught the overhead light. It was not large, no eagle, no donor crest, no polished sentence trying to sound expensive. It read, "Ruth Ann Delaney, Intake Lobby." Below that, smaller letters, "Master Sergeant, United States Army. Army Nurse Corps attached medical support. Federal service, 1987 to 2025. For the Delaney Forward Intake Sequence, first documented May 12, 2007, and adapted here so no patient is treated as paperwork before risk." I read it twice, not because I needed to, Because Daniel Reeves had chosen every plain word. April whispered, "They named the lobby." Paul said, "They named the work." That was better. Belle looked at me. "Is it correct?" My throat tightened. I gave it time. "Yes," I said. "It's correct." Mrs. Palmer said, "Then sit down before I make you." That broke the lobby more than any formal line could have. A few people laughed, quietly, carefully, human sound returning to a place after hard truth. I sat at the small desk beside the plaque. The chair was plain. Metal legs, vinyl seat, a place to work. Reeves had known that too. On the desk sat a black pen, a clean intake pad, and a small brass nameplate turned face down. Bell reached for it. I caught his wrist. "Let me." He let go. I turned it over. Ruth Delaney, Intake Safety Advisor. Not honorary, not volunteer, not memory. Advisor. I looked at Voss. He said, "Written authority will be in place by end of day." "Before I leave," I said. He nodded. "Before you leave." Signed by Saeed. Saeed looked startled. Belle said, "That was her condition." Saeed looked at me. "Mine?" "You see the lobby," I said. "That's the job." Her eyes shone, but her voice stayed firm. "Then I'll sign." April stepped near the desk. "What about me?" Alvarez answered from behind her. "You'll give your statement. Retaliation protection is in writing. I'll send it before council does anything clever." April nodded. "Good." Then she looked at me. "I'm sorry I froze," she said. I said, "You unfroze." "I should have stopped him." "You were trapped under his order." I still typed. "You also saved the audit trail." She looked down. "By accident." "Most records survive by accident," I said. "Then someone decides to use them." April wiped her cheeks. "Can I do that now?" "You already did." Bell placed Reeves's personal envelope on the desk. My name was across the front in his square hand. Ruth. Just Ruth. The lobby kept moving around it. Phones rang. Clinic C called for another wheelchair. A child near the vending machine asked his grandfather why everyone was whispering. The grandfather said, "Because adults are learning." I kept my hand on the envelope but did not open it. Bell said, "After the patients." I said, "After the patients." At 1:10, Alvarez came back with a printed order. She set it on the desk beside my nameplate. "Temporary authority," she said. "Effective immediately. Intake Safety Advisor may halt lobby intake flow for clinical risk, documentation conflict, or unsafe staffing ratio. Requires nursing confirmation within 5 minutes." I read the signature line. Carl Voss had signed. Lieutenant Farah Saeed had signed beneath him. Bell had signed as dedication board chair. Alvarez had signed as witness. I picked up the pen and added my name last. Not first, last. That suited me. Voss watched the pen move. "Mrs. Delaney." I looked up. "I have work to do," he said. "Yes." "I'll start with the 6-month audit." "Start with staffing." He breathed out. "Staffing, then audit." Saeed said, "I'll help with both." "No," I said. They looked at me. Saeed stays with patients. Voss handles audit with Alvarez. Saeed opened her mouth, then closed it. Voss nodded. "Right." That was why authority needed to be written. People forget what they know when pressure enters the room. A security officer came from the administration hall. "Inspector," he said, "Captain Harlan is being escorted out through the side entrance." Alvarez said, "Pause." The officer paused. She looked at Bell. "Public lobby?" Bell looked at me. I did not want another scene. I did not want more shame pulled across tile. But Harlan had done his harm in public. His exit needed a witness, not a show. I said, "Through here, no speech." Alvarez nodded. "Bring him through." Edwards stood. Please. His voice had changed. It was smaller now. I looked at him. No speech. He sat back down. Harlan came through the side hall with the younger inspector on one side and Mendez on the other. He had no badge. His uniform still fit, but it no longer carried him. He saw the uncovered plaque. His steps slowed. Nobody clapped. Nobody hissed. Mrs. Palmer folded her hands in her lap. April stood behind the desk. Paul stopped beside the west row. Saeed remained near Clinic C with a chart in her hand. Harlan read the plaque. All of it. I watched his eyes reach the line about paperwork. He looked at me at the small desk. Not by the door. At the desk. He swallowed. Mrs. Delaney, he said. I waited. He looked at the lobby, then back at me. I said you were nobody here. The word returned one last time. Nobody. This time it sounded worn out. Harlan said, I was wrong. I said, yes. He nodded. Then he looked at April. Don't soften your statement. April gripped the counter. What? Don't soften it, he said. I'll have counsel. You should tell it straight. Edward made a sharp motion. Grant. Harlan did not look at him. I changed the Choi note, he said. I changed others, too. Alvarez lifted her recorder. Harlan saw it. Record it. The lobby went silent. Not quiet. Silent. Harlan said, I wanted clean numbers before Columbus came. I thought I could fix the room later. He looked at me. You were the room, he said. That was not redemption. It was a beginning with a bill attached. Alvarez said, Captain, stop until counsel is present. Harlan shook his head. No, he'll tell me to make it small. Edward stood again. Grant, enough. Harlan finally looked at him. No, he said. That's how we got here. Edward's face changed. For the first time, he looked like a father instead of a donor. Harlan turned back to Alvarez. I'll give the full statement in conference too. Alvarez nodded to Mendez. Take him. As Harlan passed my desk, he stopped. I said, keep walking. He did. That was the grace I had left for him. No more, no less. The side doors opened and closed behind him. April sat down slowly. Her hands were shaking again, but she turned to the keyboard. Saeed said, April. April looked up. Saeed pointed to the phone, which was ringing. April wiped her face once. Liberty Ridge intake, she said. Tell me what's happening. I stayed at the desk and watched the lobby return to work. By 2 o'clock, the chairs had space between them. Martin Choi was on his way to Columbus with his wife beside him. Benson was sitting upright in observation, arguing about pudding. The man rubbing his jaw had been moved upstairs. The Walker repair had been sent to prosthetics with a real appointment, not a sticky note. Voss came back with a folder. 6-month audit has started, he said. Staffing grid is being redone. By whom? Me, Saeed. 2 nurses from evening shift. Good. He set the folder down. Your copy. I opened it. The authority order was inside. So was a schedule for 3 review sessions, all in the lobby, all with nursing present. I looked at the times. These happen before your next board meeting. Yes. Then it has a chance. He accepted that too. Bell stood by the east doors, speaking with General Harrow and General Pike. Admiral Jonas had taken a call near the flag. 4 generals had come for a ceremony. They stayed for cleanup. That told me more about them than the salute had. Bell returned when the lobby settled. Ruth, he said, you can go home. I know. You should. I know that too. He looked at Reeves's envelope under my hand. You going to open it? I looked at the plaque, then at the desk. Then at April, answering calls with Saeed within sight. Yes, I said, but not here. Bell nodded. Where? Outside. He walked with me to the east doors. The July air came in warm when they opened. East Mercer Road was bright and busy. Cars passed. A bus sighed at the stop. Someone across the street carried a pharmacy bag under one arm. I sat on the bench by the entrance, the same bench where I had eaten lunch on quiet days and swallowed anger on loud ones. Belle stayed standing. I opened Reeves's envelope. There was one sheet inside. No citation, no seal, just his typing. Ruth, if Marcus is reading the public one, you are probably mad at me. I was. The next line made my breath catch. Good. Anger means you know something was taken. I read slower. Do not give the rest of your back to a place that will not build legs of its own. Teach them. Stop them when needed. Then sit down. That is an order if you need one. It is a favor if you do not. I folded the letter once. Belle said nothing. I looked at East Mercer Road, then back through the glass at the lobby. April was standing now, pointing a family toward Saeed. Paul was moving chairs without being told. Voss was at the counter with Alvarez, not hiding in his office. I set it down straight. Then I went back inside. The lobby did not stop because I returned. That was the first good sign. April had 3 callers on hold. Paul was walking an elderly man toward Clinic B. Saeed had one hand on a chart and one hand on a wheelchair brake. Voss stood at the counter with his sleeves rolled once, reading the staffing grid like it could accuse him. It could. Belle came in behind me and stayed near the entrance. He knew better than to stand over a working desk. April looked up. Mrs. Delaney? Ruth, I said. She nodded once. Ruth. Family at window 2 says he's short of breath. I stood, not fast. Fast makes families panic. Name? Howard Klein. Age? 72. Color? April checked the man's face. That mattered more than the screen. Gray. Chair or feet? Feet. Then he doesn't wait. Saeed heard us and moved before I pointed. I've got him. I watched her reach the family. She lowered her voice. She did not ask for insurance. She did not ask for a form. She put 2 fingers on Mr. Klein's wrist and looked at his wife. How long? Since the bus, the woman said. Any chest pressure? A little. Saeed turned. EKG now. April typed. Red risk. Paul was already clearing the path. He moved 2 chairs and lifted a cane before anyone tripped over it. The cane belonged to Mrs. Palmer, who said, Young man, don't steal my only weapon. Paul froze. She held out her hand. Bring it back after. He smiled despite himself. Yes, ma'am. Voss looked at the grid again. We're short 2 after 4. You were short 2 all morning, I said. He did not defend it. I know. That's different from seeing it. He marked the page with a black pen. I'm calling evening in early. Ask, don't order. His pen stopped. Right. He picked up the phone and stepped aside. I heard him say, please. That was not reform. It was a start. Starts count when they are attached to ink and witnesses. Alvarez came from conference 2 with the younger inspector. Her recorder was in her hand, off now. Harlan was not with her. Full statement? Belle asked. Enough for today, she said. Counsel arrived. He confirmed the Choi alteration on record before they stopped him. Edward stood by the donor chairs. He had lost the posture he came in with. His jacket looked too stiff for him. Alvarez looked at him. Mr. Harlan. He straightened. Yes. The board office has been notified. You're not to contact staff about statements. His mouth opened. She waited. He closed it. Understood. April heard that. She did not look away from her screen. That was better than any brave speech she could have made. A fax machine behind the desk stirred to life. Liberty Ridge still kept one because old systems die slowly. Paper slid out in short pulls. April took the pages, read the top, and brought them to me. From Columbus, she said. I read the first line. Temporary protection order for reporting staff. April's name was listed. So was Paul's. So was Saeed's. Mine was there too, which made me tired in a new place. Alvarez signed the receipt. That closes the first concern. Not closes, I said. She gave a small nod. Covers. Better. The automatic doors opened, and two men from facilities carried the old lobby directory between them. The board donor panel had been mounted under clinic listings for years, bigger than some patient signs. One man held a drill. The other held a plain replacement strip. Voss saw it. Now? Bell said, now. Edward stepped forward. That wall was approved. Bell did not turn. It's being corrected. The drill whined once. Every head in the lobby lifted. The donor panel came off the wall. Behind it, the paint was darker and clean. The facilities man set the panel on a cart, face down. The new strip went up in its place. Intake safety desk. Under it, smaller, clinical risk first. No one clapped. Mr. Klein's wife walked past it while following Saeed, and she put one hand against the wall to steady herself. Her fingers rested under the new words for 1 second. Then she kept moving. That was the widening. Not speech, action. By 3:15, the waiting room sounded like a waiting room again. Low voices, wheels, phones, the coffee machine failing at its one job. Mrs. Palmer had her cane back and a transport slip for tomorrow morning. She held it up. Real appointment, she said. Imagine that, I said. You coming tomorrow? I don't know. She studied me. That means yes. It means I don't know. She accepted that because she was old enough to respect a plain answer. Bell set Reeves's empty envelope beside the authority order. I can keep that for the archive. No. Good. I folded the letter and put it in my cardigan pocket behind the metal pin. Cloth, paper, metal. All of it light. All of it heavier than it looked. Saeed came back from Clinic C. Klein's going upstairs. Good catch, I said. April caught him. April looked up. His wife did. I said, then write that. April typed for a moment. Family reports shortness of breath after bus ride. Staff observed gray color. Nurse notified before paperwork. She looked at me. Like that? Like that. Voss came over with a second copy of the staffing grid. Evening shift has 2 coming in. 1 from urgent care can float until 6. Put names beside times. He wrote them down. Done. Post it where staff can see it. He looked at the wall, then at the desk. Here? Not behind glass. He taped it to the side of the intake desk. The tape was crooked. I left it. At 4, Bell said, I'll walk you out. This time I did not argue. We passed the plaque. I touched the edge of the desk, not the bronze. Bronze was for records. The desk was for work. April was on the phone again. Liberty Ridge intake, she said. Tell me what you see first. I stopped just long enough to hear the answer begin. Then I walked through the east doors. The next morning, I came back with Reeves's letter in my pocket. My chair waited beside the plaque.